Welcome. It's season 3 of the SHODcast. Your host, Sean Klein, Matt McKenney over here, Mike Height over here. How's it going, gentlemen? After draft day.
Good. Excited for the year to start.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe it's already been a week since we were at Rushford. But
well, we've got a lot of teams to get into, so let's get right into it. But of course, before we jump into anything, we have a Pokemon first.
Who's that Pokemon?
Here were your hints from last week. He was a 2009 NFC East wide receiver, played in that weird wide receiver tight end flex during the 2009 championship, and he averaged 13.2 points a game. Any guesses?
I think Miles
wrong, I think, right?
Yeah, I said Miles Austin. You told me I was wrong. So
Miles Austin, that's a good guess. He is an NFC or was an NFC East wide receiver, but the actual answer is Steve Smith, the other one, not the good one, the bad one. Well, we have plenty of other good and bad players to talk about here, so let's dive right into it. And Matt, you want to talk about how we kind of constructed this, because we're going to get right into Flutie Flakes, and you can talk about how we built these numbers and got these grades. All right?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, basically what we did was we looked at each position group and we graded each of the hosts graded each position group, and we came up with an overall grade for the entire team out of 100, and then we ranked them based on all of those overall grades. So there's a little bit of ambiguity here. It's a little bit of just kind of personal preference, but these are the consensus rankings.
And you can see here there's lots of different colors. We're all represented on the right side of the screen. Myself in red, Mike in green, and Matt in blue. Those were the grades. So why don't you guys break down the Flutie Flakes and that quarterback situation that he has going on? Mike, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good, but we have seen in the past that having one quarterback can lead to a championship. I'm not predicting that this year, obviously. But, he does have that vaunted Cleveland passing attack locked down, with Jacoby for the first 11 games of the season, and then Deshaun Watson, from game 12 on. I don't think those games are really going to matter for the Flutie Flakes, but he will have it. He also has Tyrod if something happens to Daniel Jones, but, short of an injury, I don't really see Tyrod getting any playing time, so I think the Flutie Flakes will be starting one quarterback all year.
Matt,
it's hard.
You didn't grade him well either.
No, I didn't. I mean, it's a pretty well-known fact that he got into some trouble with trying to find a quarterback during the auction last weekend, and ended up trying to shake up his roster a little bit towards the end of the draft, and was able to land Deshaun Watson, who is obviously a good talent, but not going to be available for more than half the year. So, he's going to have the rest of his roster kind of keep him afloat until Watson becomes available, which is going to be tough to do.
Taking a look at his running backs, this is where he might have spent a lot of cash, actually, with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different running backs. Matt, what's your thought on his depth there, and is it good enough to get him some wins?
Yeah, I actually don't mind the running back group. I have him graded as a B, 6th overall in the league, which I think is pretty formidable. He's got depth, multiple starting players available, and also he's got the entire Buffalo backfield. So, whoever emerges out of that group is going to be somebody he can kind of roll out there. The problem is that is that group going to be a committee, and that's I think where you got to be concerned. I think one guy I really want to highlight here is Javonte Williams, because he's a really good talent, but it seems that the Denver Broncos are really committed to at least putting him in a timeshare with Melvin Gordon. So the upside is certainly capped with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I completely agree. But I mean, it's pretty fair to say that this running back group would look a lot better with Jonathan Taylor mixed in, but we had the worst trade of all time during the draft, I would say.
What was the trade again? Remind me.
DJ Moore and $13 auction for Jonathan Taylor was the trade. I was sitting in the middle of them, so I was in the middle of it. To be honest, there really weren't any negotiations. It was Brian panicking and Brandon jumping on the opportunity, which, I mean, you can't fault him for. Who wouldn't? But yeah. But I actually think Brian's running backs are pretty good. I mean, I think the Bengals are going to have a lot better offensive line this year, so I think Mixon's going to benefit from that. I'm not a huge fan of Josh Jacobs, but I do think that offense is going to be better this year. Like Matt said, I mean, Javonte is obviously more explosive too. And then, he has the whole Bills backfield locked down. So if one of them really does emerge, like I think they're going to be pretty serviceable. I'd love to hear, Sean, why you have them ranked last place.
The entire team or the running backs?
Oh, they're the running backs.
Yeah,
you have
Josh Jacobs.
14.
There's a lot of questions over his usage to start. I do like Joe Mixon. I thought that was a decent pick, but I didn't like for how much he got him for. I don't recall what the number was at this time, but I remember looking at the roster and just being like, gosh, that's a bit much for Joe Mixon. And again, with the Buffalo backfield, there's a question. If someone does emerge, yeah, Brian hit the lottery on this. But if someone doesn't, and it is a shared committee like it was sort of at the beginning of last year between Singletary and Moss, they're not going to be startable. Any of those three guys might just be bench players, and you're filling up your bench with three guys that probably won't ever make it into your lineup, or there's a good chance they might not. So that's why I ranked them last.
If you take out the Buffalo backs, just hypothetically, I mean, hell, if you take out the Buffalo backs and Josh Jacobs, I still don't think this is the worst running back group. Like, if you just drafted Joe Mixon
Agreed.
and Javonte Williams, I think this is still at least top 10, at least.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anyway, let's move on to receivers.
Mike, you graded them a B+, and Matt, you rated him actually the highest here in the wide receivers. You gave him an A-.
Yeah, because
I like this receiver group. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm not big on Cooper, Green, or Jones, but I think with the way that Brian kind of constructed his team, he's going to be starting 3 or 4 running backs a week, and having Mike Evans and DJ Moore as your starting wide receivers, like, sign me up for that all day. Like, I think DJ Moore is playing with probably the best quarterback he's ever had in his career, and he's put up very good numbers with garbage. And then if Mike Evans comes back healthy, or at least 90% of himself, playing with the greatest quarterback of all time in a very good offense, like that's a great piece to have. So I think Brian's starting wide receivers are going to be very good. And that, like, just going forward for the rest of our discussion tonight, like, I didn't rank on overall drafts. I really kind of based it on who I perceive starting and who could start at some point throughout the year. Guys you're getting for $1, unless they're really going to be starting pieces, like, that's not really something I factored into my grades. So
Same.
To me, it was down to Mike Evans and DJ Moore, and that's a very good combo in my eyes.
Same. I agreed with that. That's why you see the B+ for me there as well. We both ranked him number 6. So he's got a solid group of wide receivers. The tight ends, I think, have a little bit more of a question mark. Don't you agree, Matt?
Yeah, I like Dawson Knox. I mean, I think, anytime you get a tight end in a very explosive offense like Buffalo's, you're going to get opportunities. We saw him kind of break out, if you will, last year. Had a really good season. So I think that he could certainly build on that. I'm not really paying much attention to the Hooper pick here. That I'm just kind of grading this based off Dawson Knox, and I think he's definitely a top 10 tight end in the league right now. So that's why I gave him a B and have him given the ninth overall grade here.
Overall feel about the Flutie Flakes. Mike, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I still had him ranked last, but it's mainly just because he has one serviceable quarterback, and you could argue whether or not Jacoby Brissett's serviceable, but he's gonna be starting at a significant disadvantage to every other team he plays. But like I still think this team's okay. Like I don't think that they're gonna get rolled over. They're gonna beat some teams this year. Like he has very talented players that could have explosion weeks, and they're not gonna. I don't obviously don't think they're gonna be a playoff team, but they're not gonna go winless.
No, this league is way too competitive for that. Matt, what are your final thoughts on the Flutie Flakes?
I agree with what Mike said. I mean, the quarterback, deficiency is his largest handicap by far. But I also agree. I mean, he definitely has some good pieces here. Um, I think he's going to be starting, 3 running backs every week because that's kind of the strength of his lineup here. And I think the real question is going to be what kind of receiver play does he get? If he can get some good weeks out of his receivers, I think he might actually be okay. Even if you are only getting, 10, 11 points out of Jacoby Brissett every week. If you can get a couple boom weeks out of Amari Cooper, where maybe, he starts to kind of be the target there in Cleveland with Brissett. I mean, that is a stack, as putrid as that stack is, it's still a stack. So what I mean, but think of it this way though, like if you have a bad team, where your quarterback is going to be, not really utilized that much in the weeks that they do throw, he's going to be throwing to Cooper, so he's going to be scoring in those weeks, which is going to be good from a fantasy perspective because you need those boom weeks with both of those players at the same time. And as long as he can have, decent games from the other positions, I do think Flutie Flakes can squeak out a few wins.
Moving to the number 13 team, the Rusty Truckers. Matt, let's talk about your quarterback situation there. You actually don't think it's that bad. You've got a B plus.
Yeah, maybe I'm just way over on this. I don't know, but I think Jalen Hurts is spectacular as a fantasy quarterback. I think he's actually the number 2 fantasy quarterback right now behind Josh Allen. I think he's extremely dynamic. He can run. They've upgraded their passing attack. They have one of the best receivers in the league now with AJ Brown. They seem to have a really good connection together. So I was very excited to draft him. And then there's a decent bat. I actually think Davis Mills is not a bad fantasy option. They're going to be behind a lot. They're going to be throwing. He actually played decent last year. And Desmond Ritter, like who knows? Maybe he gets some snaps this year towards the end of the year, and he's got some dual threat capability as well. So I think this is a good group.
Mike, you're kind of also in that same range. You rated him a B, but still have him ranked 7th.
Yeah, I think Matt's like I agree with Matt. Jalen Hurts I think is going to be the number 2 quarterback this year behind Allen. I echo everything he said about the adding AJ Brown, how important that's going to be for their passing attack. We'll talk about this later, but I think Dallas Goedert's going to take another step, and I think it's going to be really big for him. And you got Davis Mills for $1, Matt? Like was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like $4.
Oh, $4. Even so, it's a starting quarterback who really is not in danger of losing his job.
Right.
And so and you're right. Ritter absolutely has a shot if Mariota struggles, and which is obviously very much in the realm of possibilities. He lost his job to Ryan Tannehill a couple of years ago. So I think Matt's quarterbacks are definitely above average, and I guess I have them ranked at average. But I think Jalen Hurts can lead him to a lot of wins this year.
Yeah, I like Jalen Hurts a lot. It's just the other part of that quarterback trio that I don't like, and that's why you see such a low grade. I think there were just other teams out there that were able to put together two decent quarterbacks. But hey, I think this could work out for you too. Switching
Fine.
over yes.
You're like the Russian judge.
Switching over to the running backs, Matt, you think you have the best group in the league, and Mike, you agree with that. Let's start with Mike on this. Why do you think it's the best group in the league?
I don't know how you can argue with this, but he has the number one running back in PPR, I think, and like I don't know, I just think Saquon's going to have a great year. So that's really the only thing that I was judging it based off of. I think having that combo, and they're talking about getting Taylor less carries and getting the ball into Hines' hands more too. So he's a very serviceable PPR running back. But I mean, those two in itself, I think, already gives them the best two running backs. You could say that Simpson is probably a close second. I would argue that, but I think that Matt's got far and away the best running back tandem in the league.
Matt, you can see that I did not have the same thought as you guys on this, but I want to hear your thoughts on how you stack that running back backfield.
Yeah, I'm deferring my time to you.
Okay, so on this, I just X-nayed two players from my list before the draft, and it was McCaffrey and Barkley. I think both of them are going to get injured early on in the season. They've both shown a tendency to get injured early on in the season. I think it's just going to happen again this year. And,
let me jump in. If there is anybody in the show who you think might have, I don't know, some insight, maybe a little bit of knowledge, and I guess some
injury
some understanding
stuff?
of the way injuries work. Well,
I hope it works out for you. I hope it does. I'm just saying, if one or both of them go down, your options are limited there.
So it's just the injuries then. That's the only reason.
That's the biggest reason for me. I feel like you're gonna be missing one or two of them.
You can't look at a draft and base it
absolutely
off of who
can.
you think get injured. Like it's not.
All right.
No, I mean they just happen to be two players that I just did not want any part of in this draft, and I stayed away from them. But you seem to value them, and that's fine. Just two different opinions on it.
Yeah, we're gonna look at quite a few other running back groups, and we'll just have to all, as we watch this, keep in mind what other running back groups we see that have a ranking higher than 11. I'm gonna take a little bit more of my time actually back. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the running backs. So, injury stuff aside, so first of all, I do have to say this. I think it's a harbinger that one of my nice deep stashes gets shot in the knee preseason, and all of a sudden is going to miss tons of time because I think he actually was probably going to be a contributor on my team this year, and now I'm not so sure that's going to happen. But I mean, Alexander Madison might get traded. It's possible. There've been talks about that. If that's the case, he could be a starter somewhere. Mike did mention Nyheim Hines getting a larger pass catching role this year, which is something I really do believe in. I think he's going to be a really good PPR option, especially with my weaker wide receiver group. And then Rachaad White's been somebody that, a lot of the fantasy guys have been talking about all offseason as a really good PPR option in Tampa Bay. So I'm definitely excited for this group.
Yeah, I do like Rachaad White a lot. Heading to the wide receivers, you don't feel as confident here as you did in the running back group.
No. I mean, it's the thing of it is like there's so many good receivers in the league, and somebody's got to be 14th. And I chose to spend my money on the running backs and at quarterback, and that's where I allocated my funds. But it doesn't mean I don't think that there's some value in this group. I think Tyreek Hill is undervalued right now. I don't think people see him as nearly the threat that he could be because of the quarterback change, which is, I mean, that's a warranted concern. He's not nearly the quarterback that Mahomes is. But I still think Tyreek Hill he's getting paid for a reason, and he's going to be targeted, and he's going to have weeks where he puts up a lot of points because he can turn any play into a touchdown. And that hasn't changed with the quarterback. He still can turn any play into a touchdown. I think Devontae Smith is underrated. I think Josh Palmer might be really scary this year. I think, with
Yeah.
LA, especially with Keenan Allen getting a little bit older, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing him emerge a little bit. So yeah, I mean, definitely not a great group, but I also think it's not a tire fire.
Mike, you also have them ranked last of all the wide receiver groups in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some truth to what Matt said, that maybe Tyreek is being a little undervalued at this point in time, but I don't love him as a wide receiver one. In a 14-team league, it's tough. Obviously, if you're going to allocate most of your resources towards running back, your wide receiver is probably going to suffer. And then on Devonta Smith, like I was talking about earlier, I think he's the third option in that passing game. I think he'll have some good weeks, but I just don't love him as my wide receiver too. But I agree with Matt. I think that Palmer could have a very good year in LA. Like he said, Keenan Allen is definitely getting older. He's shown signs of losing a step here. And as much as the Muppets love Mike Williams, I just don't think he's ever going to be a bona fide wide receiver one. So I do think there's going to be an opportunity there. I don't know. I may take, a while into the season for that to come to fruition, but I can definitely see it happening.
I echo everything you guys said on this. I can't possibly add any more. So let's move on to tight ends. This is where we all agree that, Matt, you could have done a little bit more work on it, don't you think?
Yeah, I didn't give a crap about tight ends this year. If you don't get Pitts or Andrews or Kelsey, then just scrape the bottom of the barrel. And I mean, I added. I mean, Tanyan's on this list, or Robert Tanyan's on this list too, because he's just after my running back gets shot in the knee, I got to pick somebody up. So he was the guy I chose.
Yeah, not a bad pickup. I think you could probably throw him right into the starting slot.
Yeah,
I think he might actually be a starter.
Yeah, I didn't really care about this at all.
Team number 12. Actually, before we get into team number 12,
hold
overall,
on. Final thoughts.
Yes, overall, final thoughts. Matt, go first.
Never in my wild. So I don't think my team's the best, but never in my wildest dreams did I think I would end up in 13th place. I gotta say.
Is it due to my ranking there? Is that the only reason?
Well, that didn't help me. That certainly didn't help me. I mean, I'm floored actually. I'm floored. I did not think my team was this bad. Like I think my team's actually pretty decent. I rank my team 9th, I think, this year, which is still pretty conservative. Like this team, I realize it's a boomer bust team. Like this could be a bust, but it could also be like a crazy boom if things go the way they could. Right. And not a lot of teams can say that. So I'm kind of surprised that this is 13, that I'm here.
Well, and I think a big reason why you are there is just because of my dislike for all of your players. And it's just a personal thing. It has nothing to do with like stats or medical.
That's what it's a personal vendetta.
It's just a personal vendetta.
I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it.
I just can't stand all of your players. I could show you my draft board. I put them all in red.
Yeah.
Just about every single one.
It's incredible. Why? I mean, let's put me at 14. I mean, why stop here at this point? I mean, this is just ridiculous.
I can't wait till you guys play each other this year. It's gonna be
McCaffrey's gonna hang 40 on
fireworks.
You. McCaffrey and Saquon, they're gonna combine for 75, and the Muppets are just gonna be face down. It's gonna be bad. Yeah. This is bulletin board material for sure.
Well, I definitely don't think I to be honest with you, a lot of these teams probably from 6 to 14 were all really close together for me. And so it was
6 to 14.
Yeah,
here's the fact. Here's the fact. Here's the backpedaling.
No, it's a tight league, man. Mike, what are your thoughts? Final thoughts.
I definitely don't think this is the second worst team in the league. I'll say that. I think that his receivers are gonna kind of limit his ceiling, but I do think he's going to have a very high floor. So I think he's going to be middle of the pack.
Well, even if you take my ranking out of it, you have an average of 83. We'll see where that stands as we head through the show. Next up, JWALSH football team at number 12 with an 80.3 grade. Wide receivers. I ranked them best there. I really like his wide receivers. I was targeting both Prescott and Cousins. And then you have Pickett, who I think will be starting probably by mid-season. We'll see how Trubisky actually does, but probably.
How
probably
high
by
are you right
mid-season.
now?
What do you mean?
You just
Like,
said wide receiver.
did I
All
say
right.
wide receiver? I meant quarterback. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's not a big deal here. But
So
Prescott, Cousins, Pickett, I think it's a solid 3. Matt?
yeah, so I do think this is a solid group as well. I mean, this is like the quintessential, like Mike was talking about floor a minute ago when we were talking about my team. And I think this is like a floor group of quarterbacks. Like this is the quarterback group that's going to get you that standard, 40 points a week, not really have to worry about it, solid, and you're good to go, and let the rest of your roster kind of get your ceiling for you. I'm not as optimistic about Pickett. I think that there it's not so much that I worry about him not starting. I think he probably does get plenty of snaps this year. I just don't know how good Pittsburgh's going to be, and I think they're going to play in a lot of slow-paced, kind of grind them out games. Their defense is very good. Najee Harris is going to be featured. Their O-line is garbage. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get a lot of startable weeks out of Pickett.
Mike?
I agree with Matt. I think that the injury to Tyron Smith is going to be really big for Dallas. I think it's going to limit their ability to run the football. Because of that, I think that they're going to be passing a lot more. So I think Dak's going to have a very good year, and I think Kirk Cousins is is in line for his best for a career year here. I mean, I think with the guy coming over from the Rams, I think it's going to be a much more offensively minded team. I think, with another year for Jefferson under his belt, Thielen's going to be fine. Irv Smith, I think, is going to take another step. I just think it's going to be a really good offense. It's an offense that I made a point of getting a piece of. So I think it's going to be – I think Jamie's quarterbacks are good.
Jamie's running backs. We're all over the place with this. Let's go with Mike. You have him ranked lowest of the 3 of us.
Yeah, echoing what I just said, I do think that having a piece of Minnesota is important. I don't know if I love that Jamie got the quarterback and starting running backs for both teams. I do think that kind of limits your ceiling there. There's only so many points to be scored. But I think that Dalvin's going to have a really good year if he can stay healthy. I think that he's kind of play that Todd Gurley role from a few years ago. He's going to get the really valuable touches, probably 4 or 5 catches a game. I mean, I'm originally the one that won Cook in the auction, and then I realized that I had no quarterback, so I kind of panicked and ended up selling Janey. But I think Dalvin's going to be fine. I think Zeke is really going to struggle behind the line that's banged up now, and he is over the hill at this point in time. I mean, Pollard's fine. Algier, he was 8th on the depth chart. He's now 3rd, but I just don't really expect anything of he or Foreman. At least Algier possibly later in the season, but Jamie's running backs are fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they're okay. I mean, I think Cook is still one of the better running backs in the league. He's starting to get a little bit older, but still has tons of volume. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He still gets the goal line work. has had some injury problems in the last couple of years. Which as you get to be older and you start kind of wearing down, that is a concern. I'm not a big fan of this Dallas conglomerate here. I think that Zeke is somebody that is a real concern. I don't know how good he is actually. I think he's kind of more of a plug-year back at this point, and having both he and Pollard on the same team, I think really kind of handcuffs him a little bit because he's going to have a hard time being able to get the most out of that backfield unless one of them gets hurt. He almost has to root for an injury in order to be able to get the most out of that group. And then I just don't see a lot of depth here. You know, I I think it's basically going to be those two teams, just Minnesota and Dallas, and just see what he can get out of that.
I really liked his running back depth here. I know a lot of people are against Zeke Elliott, and this even goes back to last year. There were questions over Zeke Elliott last year too, and he still put together decent numbers. I had him on the Muppets last year. He still put together decent numbers every time that he played a game. And the part that I really like about James's team is that he also has Pollard. He's got both of them there. So if Zeke does start kind of teetering a little bit, you can throw in Pollard, and he's gonna get you that 12 to 16 points, maybe even 20-point game if Zeke goes down. So I really like his running backs. It's his wide receivers that kind of bring everything down for me. Matt, talk about the wide receiver group real quick.
Well, so we talked about this a second ago. Like everybody's got good receivers. The wide receivers so deep nowadays that you can pick out guys. George Pickens, for example, may have a big year. He certainly could be a diamond in the rough type player. But when you look at this wide receiver group as a whole, you do have a questionable number one in Mike Williams. Is he going to deliver and be, a top 14 receiver this year? I think there's a question mark there. Hunter Renfrow with all the targets coming in from Devonta Adams, can he, run back what he did last year? I think that's doubtful. Obviously, everybody has the concerns with DK Metcalf and, the departure of Russell Wilson and now, they have Geno Smith / Drew Lock at quarterback. So I think there's a lot of question marks here with this receiver group. And I do think that they're going to have some trouble scoring points as a result.
Mike, you have him ranked in the same place as Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way as Matt. I just Mike Williams had a spurt last year, but I don't see him repeating that. I think Renfrow really was carried by all the touchdowns last year. I think a lot of those are going to go to Adams. DK lost. Russell Wilson is now playing with Geno Smith. So I have my concerns. Like Matt said, I do think Pickens can, he's an immense talent. The reason he got drafted where he did was off the field issues. So I would not be surprised if he became the wide receiver one in Pittsburgh. But that may take a little while for him to overtake Deontay. So I don't know. I have my concerns, obviously.
Mike Williams Chargers fan. And I would love to have Mike Williams on my team, but having him as part of the nation for the last several years, I think, gives me a unique position to tell you what it's like having Mike Williams, and it's very boom or bust. He doesn't go through spurts per se. I think he's very I think the coaching staff kind of game plans him in, because there will be games that he'll score 3 touchdowns, and then the very next week he won't get a single reception. So that's kind of what you get with Mike Williams. You're going to get 40 points or you might get 5. So that's concerning. I like to have consistency on my team, but he's going to win you some games. So you do have that going for you. Getting into the tight ends, I have him ranked the worst of them. I just don't like either of these guys. Matt, you have him ranked to the bottom too. What are your thoughts on Cole and Hunter?
Yeah, well, I'm not big on Chicago this year. I think they're just going to be really bad. I realize that he's probably going to be one of the bigger targets in that offense, but how valuable really is that? I just don't know if that's going to be something that's going to yield a lot of fantasy value. Hunter Henry is a good tight end, I think, but I don't know if these guys really elevate your team at all. That there's not really a lot of upside in my mind here.
Mike, anything further to add on that?
No, I would just say that there's a lot of guys that went for a lot more money than Cole Kmet and that I like a lot less. I think Jamie got him for $1. I'll bring up the guys when we get to them, but I think he's gonna be the number 2 receiver on the Bears. Fields has shown during the preseason that he's been looking for him. I do think he's a talent. It's not like he's just some plug out there running around catching balls and blocking. I actually do think he has some talent. I don't hate the pick. I actually think he's going to be fine. That's why I gave him a B-. I ranked him number 8. Like I said, there's some other guys that went for a lot more money that I like less than I do Cole Kmet.
Mike, what are your final thoughts on the JWALSH football team 2022?
Going off of what you just said, I do think there's gonna be those weeks where Mike Williams has his 3 touchdown game where Jay Walsh may put up most points in the league in a given week, but just consistency wise, I have my concerns. I do really feel like the receivers are gonna let him down. But like I said, he's gonna have those weeks where they go off, and it's gonna be unfortunate to be the team on the other side.
Matt, your thoughts?
There's still a ton of talent at receiver here. I mean, there's a lot of raw talent with these players. Metcalf is still a freak. Mike Williams still has tons of potential. If he continues to see a good target load, they might actually be better than we're projecting them. And we've already talked about Pickens and the upside that he has. So, I wouldn't necessarily count out Jay Walsh. I think he's got some pieces here who could really explode. And honestly, I mean, it's not that far off from being a team that could really make some noise. It's just he's got to get some things to break his way.
Yeah, I mean, you can see I really like his quarterbacks and running backs. His wide receivers, as we've said, kind of don't matter because you throw in any wide receiver that's on a starting team, you're probably going to get about 10 points with them. So I don't think he's got a bad team, and I think 12 is kind of low for him. But again, it's a crowded league.
What can I ask you?
Yeah.
Can I ask you why you decided to rank his running backs number 1 overall in the league?
Just a feeling. Just a feeling. I like Dalvin Cook. I like that Dallas backfield. Sorry if you're holding a grudge against me.
No. I'm over the truckers snub. I was just curious because I mean you must have some feeling about Cook and Elliott. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
that
I
you
mean,
really like that tandem.
all 3 of those guys were guys that I was targeting. I probably would have been in on Cook, but I think he went after Henry. So I kind of shelled him off to the side, and I wanted to get Elliott and Pollard, but by the time they went, they were either going for too much than I expected, or I didn't have enough cash left. But all 3 of these guys were guys that I would have gladly had on my team, if I had managed my money better. Moving along to team number 11, Feel the Rush. I think this is the lowest preseason ranking that we've ever given them. Matt, talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, I think this is actually a decent quarterback group. I know there were a lot of concerns, this preseason about Matt Stafford and his elbow and whether or not that would hinder his ability to, reproduce what he did last year. I think he was quarterback 9 or something like that last year. And I think he's probably somewhere in the same area this year. He still is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think from a fantasy perspective, he still offers pretty good value. Mac Jones, like, is a solid quarterback too. I don't have any problems with this group at all. I mean, I ranked him right in the middle. Flacco is more of just a, he's a space holder until, Wilson comes back. Um, so we don't really know how long that's going to be, but he's obviously a drop candidate. But Stafford and Jones, I think, is a solid duo.
Mike?
Yeah, I think this group is middle of the road. Stafford, I think, had an incredible year last year. I don't expect him to repeat that. Mostly because I don't think Cooper Kupp's going to have as good of a year as he did last year, just because it's probably not possible. But I think the Rams are going to be good. I think Stafford's elbow will be fine. That's not really what I'm concerned about. I'm much more concerned about Mac Jones and that offense. Between Joe Judge and Matt Patricia arguing over who's going to be the offensive coordinator, I just don't think that offense is going to be very good. Mac really didn't show much, and he really doesn't have much to throw to. So I do not have high expectations for Mac Jones this year. And Joe Flacco is going to have some weapons this year. He can probably get him by for the first couple games of the season, but then I think he's really going to be struggling at quarterback.
And consistency here. We all had his quarterback group ranked 8th in the league. So
Let's give ourselves a round of applause for an agreement there. Everybody agrees. Same spot.
Everyone's in the same place there. All right, running backs. Rated a B, 7th if you kind of combine our scores. Matt, you had the best. You had them ranked 4th with DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, and Cam Akers.
Yeah, I think I really value depth a lot more than you guys do. And I think it shows in the rankings and the way I decided to kind of allocate my grades and stuff. But I'm a huge Swift guy. I think DeAndre Swift has the upside to be perhaps the running back 1 this year. Their offensive line has improved. In fact, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. I think that's one of the things that the Lions really take a lot of pride in. DeAndre Swift is one of the most dynamic players in the league. So I think he really has a ton of upside. He could easily be the running back 1 this year, in my opinion. I have a ton of concerns about the next 3 guys on this list. Montgomery, Akers, and Dobbins for various reasons. Montgomery because of the offensive line and the offense and as a whole. Cam Akers because of his Achilles injury, and J.K. Dobbins because of his knee injury. So, I think those players are still, there's a lot of upside there, but there's also a lot of risk that's built in. Gus Edwards is kind of in the same boat. I really don't know who's going to be the guy in Baltimore this year because I just don't know what the status of those guys' health is. And we've seen kind of various reports that are saying, good, bad, and ugly about these guys and how they're bouncing back from their injuries. But I think in general, when you draft a bunch of different players and they all have opportunity, I think it gives you the opportunity to be able to plug and play whoever's hot and whoever's playing well. So that's why I gave them a higher grade.
I mean, at this point, that Baltimore backfield could be run through Kenyon Drake, who's a free agent in the show. So, you never know. My feelings on it were mostly revolved around David Montgomery. I believe he was on the Nation last year, and I absolutely hated having him. He was kind of a flex player, and every time I started him, I wish I had started someone else. So I just didn't like having David Montgomery on my team. I do like Cam Akers, but again, I echo what you said about the injury concern. And I just am not comfortable enough with that Detroit offense to really trust DeAndre Swift yet. So it could work out for him. It's just not a backfield for me. Heading over to the wide receivers.
Well, hold on. Let's let Mike talk.
Sorry. Did I skip someone? I apologize. Mike.
It's all good. I don't really have much to say. I mean, I kind of disagree with Matt on because we're in a 14-team league. Like, to me, depth is obviously important because there's not much on the waiver wire, but I value starters over depth so much more, just in my mind when I'm doing these ratings. But so I think this running back group is very much buoyed by DeAndre Swift, because I agree, Matt. Like I do think he has the upside to be right around number 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there, because he's such a good receiver. Jamal Williams is really his only competition in the backfield. So I do think he's going to have a great season. It's just the rest of this group that really concerns me. David Montgomery, we were just talking about that. I don't really expect much out of that Bears offense. Akers, it sounds like he and Henderson are neck and neck. And, it's just he's coming off, a serious injury. Obviously, he came back faster than anybody expected last year, but it's just, I don't know. And then Dobbins, he was arguing with people on Twitter yesterday because he was limping after doing a blocking drill, and said he wasn't limping, even though it was very obvious that he was. So I think Swift is a great pick. I don't think he really has that depth that you seem to value, and I don't know. I think Swift is going to be an all-star, and this is a bunch of average guys after that.
That's fair to say. I mean, I definitely think the depth is definitely something that you do have to get concerned about with this group because of the injury concerns. So it's not like it's a full stable of running backs, like for instance the Rusty Truckers. But but nonetheless, move on.
Wide receivers, I think we do have a lot to talk about here because there's a lot of interesting names. Devontae Adams in a new uniform. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a real great end of the year last year, same as Gabe Davis. Bob Woods has always been pretty consistent throughout his career. And Alan Lazard, possibly the number 1 wide receiver in Green Bay. That sounds like a solid wide receiver core to me, but we all have them kind of ranked in the middle. Matt, why do you think that is?
Yeah, looking at this again, I'm kind of wondering why I have them so low, because I'm really a big Gabe Davis guy. I just think the offense is so good, and he's just such a big target that Allen seems to really prioritize. So I'm kind of looking at this now, like Adams, St. Brown, and Davis, like, wow, like how are they 10th? But I do feel like there are questions. I'm not sold on Adams this year. He's definitely a gamble for me. I just don't know how he's going to fit on this offense, and if he's going to have the same connection with Rodgers that he. Carr and Rodgers obviously is a big change as well. Like a lot of the other receivers have gone through this offseason. A lot of people are talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't know about him either. Like he had a great second half of the year, and I know there's a lot of talking heads out there like spewing their knowledge about Amon-Ra. I guess I have a lot of questions about this group. I'm not sold on them. I feel like actually Gabe Davis is the one I feel most convicted about.
Mike, if you could trade for one player on this wide receiver core, who would you want on your team?
It would be Gabe Davis. I mean, he was starred on my list. I had just taken Courtland Sutton right before that, so I didn't have enough money to get him and then field the team that I was looking to create. But I echo a lot of Matt's sentiments. I actually think Devontae's going to be fine in this offense. I think he's going to be the alpha. I think that Carr's going to be looking for him down in the end zone all the time. So I think that Devontae's going to be fine. Amon-Ra, I think he's going to get out to a good start, and I think that the Lions are going to be okay at the beginning of the season. But I'm more concerned about when Jameson Williams, if he comes back this season, if he does take over that number 1 role. I mean, obviously, Amon-Ra had a great season last year, and he earned every catch that he had. I just don't know if it's going to continue this year. Gabe Davis, I'm expecting double-digit touchdowns this year. I think he's going to have a monster year. I hate to say it, but I really feel like Steph Diggs lost a step last season, and I could absolutely see Gabe Davis becoming the one in this offense. I think it's very much in the realm of possibilities for the season. So I love Gabe Davis. I was heartbroken when I didn't get him last weekend. But I mean, beyond that though, Robert Woods is coming off a serious injury. I don't really expect much out of that Tennessee passing game. If it is going to be anybody, I think it's going to be Burks, but who knows? I don't think it's going to be Westbrook Akine or whoever else they got in that offense. And then Lazard, he's been on offense for 4 years now, however many years it is. Like, he's just never shown that he could be the guy. And Rodgers is just such like a trust guy. Like, he has to believe that you're going to come down with the football. Oh, he's not going to throw it to you. And I don't think that Rodgers really, in his heart of hearts, believes that Lazard is that guy. So he's gonna be fine, but I just don't see him becoming the one in that offense. So, I think he's got good starters, but they just, they don't knock my socks off, I guess is why I gave him my 9th seed.
Yeah. I think the reason why he's kind of like right in the middle here for all of us is because there's definitely potential in this wide receiver core, but it just hasn't been achieved potentially yet. It's still latent energy. So, going to the tight ends, we all had him kind of ranked low, but I do think Zach Ertz is a viable tight end, especially if you spent your money elsewhere. Matt, what do you think of Zach Ertz and Gerald Everett?
Well, Ertz is aging. There's no doubt about that. I mean, his best days are behind him. He's no longer an elite tight end like he was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But he's still playing in a good offense with a good quarterback, and if he's able to cash in on some touchdowns this season, I think he might be a guy who can put up some decent numbers. But I think the upside is extremely capped. He's probably going to be, the 4th target in that offense, if not lower. And Everett, I mean, I think Everett, honestly, in my opinion, is just a guy. I don't know if really, again, he's probably the 4th option, 5th option in that passing game after, Allen, Eckler, Williams, Palmer. Is just these guys are just not that impressive to me.
Mike?
I think Zach Ertz will be fine for the first 6 games of the year while Hopkins is out. I mean, in the games that DeAndre missed last year, he had some, catch-wise, he had a lot of catches. That's something I could see him doing again this year. I agree with what Matt said on Everett. Like, I think he's like the 5th option. I think Palmer, if he really steps out this year, is really going to cap what Everett can do. So, I don't know. I think Rob's got guys that can get in there and maybe give him 10 points a game, but, these guys aren't going to be difference makers. I think they're fine. I don't remember where I had Rob graded overall. No, I meant like ranking, like numbers wise. I don't remember. But I think he's got kind of what I said about about DeAndre Swift. Like, he's got buoys. Like I feel like Stafford is going to hold down the quarterbacks. Swift is going to hold down the running backs. Devontae and Gabe Davis are going to hold down the wide receivers. Like, he's got strong pieces. I think it's just a matter of whether or not he can hit on those other guys that I have questions about.
I think it's a solid team. I just that's the word that comes out to me. The guy who really I see as an upside guy is Swift. The rest of the team is kind of steady Eddie, which feels a little bit out of character for Rob Cav. I mean, Gabe Davis is the other guy that I would highlight from this list as being somebody who I feel strongly about having a good season this year. I think this is definitely, a playoff team. I know you guys don't agree with my opinion there, but I think this is a solid team.
I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think there's potential here, but it's, again, latent energy that's just not consumed yet. So, moving along to number 10, Gyms makes their way into that final 4 in the double digits here. Let's take a look at his quarterbacks. He's just got 2 of them, but they're both starters, Joe Burrow and Marcus Mariota. Matt, you don't like them at all. You've got them ranked 12th.
Yeah, what a great logo, first of all. It's just so funny. It reminds me of South Park every time I see it. It just looks like a confused South Park resident. Anyway, yeah, so I like Burrow. I just he doesn't have a lot of rushing upside, which I always value in fantasy quarterbacks. I didn't always value it, but now I just see the predictability that those guys bring, and when you don't have somebody like that, it's a problem. I know a lot of people think that Mariota is gonna maybe have some rushing upside to him this year, but I just don't know how good that offense is gonna be, and Ritter's nipping at the heels. I think they're gonna probably have him in at some point in time this year, and you only got two of them, so you got to make sure that they count, and so that's why I have this group ranked a little bit lower.
Mike, how do you feel about Joe Burrow, Marcus Mariota? Joe Burrow, a friend Christmas, for like what would you call him? A friend Christmas miracle forever?
Friend, yeah, friend,
A friend of friend Christmas, Joe Burrow on
yeah.
the Fat Gyms. Also a friend of friend Christmas. So yeah, we've got friends of friend Christmas all over the place in the Fat Gyms. Mike, what are your thoughts on the Burrow Mariota tandem?
I mean, I think that Burrow's gonna be great this year. I think T. Higgins is gonna take another step, and I think Jamar is gonna take another step, which is kind of crazy to say after how amazing he was last year. So I think Neil's got a very strong QB1. I'm not as convinced as Matt that Ritter's going to get any playing time this year. I think if it is, it's going to be very end of the season, when it's really not going to matter. So I think Mariota's going to be fine. He's going to be thrown to London, and he's going to have a generational talent at tight end to throw the ball to. So I think he'll be fine. I do think he's going to run. He's been running in the preseason. I don't think the team's going to be very good, but I do think they're going to be chasing points. So I do think he's going to be hucking it up there. My biggest concern with Mariota has always been just he's been very tentative, and he's not one to throw into tight windows. So, and I think that's something the Titans realized early on, and it's a reason why he is where he is now, because he's a lot like Tyrod in the sense that he just will not take. He's very risk averse.
Which is kind of
Yeah.
like Neil as a fantasy owner,
So
so it's actually kind of a perfect fit.
It's true. So I think I think Neil's quarterbacks
Can
are
I add
fine.
anything more to it? I think we kind of covered that enough. Going into the running backs, you have Nick Chubb, Darrell Henderson, Zamir White, and Raheem Mostert. Chubb seems to be the only guy that's week one startable. Matt, do you have any other opinions on that?
Not really. I'm actually I may be a little bit higher on Henderson than you guys are. I think that's probably a little bit more of a split, and if that Achilles is a lingering problem for Akers, then I think Henderson might actually be a really good fantasy play this year. He was a guy I had targeted going into the draft this year. He was a player I felt like I could really build around in terms of depth. So I like him on this team. White and Mostert, I think, are afterthoughts. They may be droppable at some point in time this year. So, Chubb is really the bell cow, and I think they're really going to ride him a lot this year. They have a good offensive line, and their quarterback is Jacoby Brissett. So he's going to have every opportunity to tote the rock and to get a lot of touches this year. I think he'll be a good rock for the gyms this year.
Mike, what do you love about the Fat Jim's running back situation, and what do you hate about it?
I don't love much. I think what Matt said is true, that Chubb's going to get a ton of carries, but I think he's going to be facing a lot of 8-man boxes because Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback. So he can get as many touches as he wants. I don't think this team's going to be scoring a lot of points. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns involved in those touches. And we are playing in a PPR league, and Nick Chubb does not catch the ball very often. So that is one of my big concerns with this running back core here. I agree with Ben. I think that Henderson's in a timeshare. I don't know. Henderson got off to a great start last year. I don't foresee that repeating this year. Zamir White is intriguing, I will say. We talked about Josh Jacobs earlier. I don't think that he's got a stranglehold on that backfield. I can definitely see Zamir White getting some touches and possibly earning more and more throughout the season. So he may become relevant at some point in the season, and then I think Mostert's dust at this point in time. So I don't think he's going to be doing much in Miami.
Well, where the Fat Gyms lack in depth in the quarterback and running back position, they have plenty of it in the wide receiver department. All of us have them ranked as an A there, in the top 5 at the very least. Matt, there's a lot to like about this wide receiver core. Where do you want to start with it?
You have to start with Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's arguably the best receiver in fantasy football. Certainly was last year. Put up a historical campaign with the Rams on his way to a Super Bowl championship, and MVP of the Super Bowl. So he's obviously a great talent in a great situation. So you got to love that. Godwin is coming off an injury, but as a wide receiver too is a pretty solid option. And then from there, he was able to get the rest of the Tampa Bay receivers. So I guess, aside from Mike Evans, whoever emerges as that second guy, even if Godwin is not really healthy, he's still going to have, a player who's going to be, in a pretty dynamic offense and able to put up some good points. So I kind of, as crazy it is as he has 3 Tampa Bay receivers, it's actually not a bad strategy. Thielen is a Neal guy for sure. I mean, that's like Macklin for Vince, like he's a Neal guy, So, and he's getting older, but he's still, probably serviceable, and obviously, he's still kind of a threat to score touchdowns. So, I think it's a solid group, but Cup is the main one there. I mean that's why we all put A down,
Mike, outside of Cup, tell me what you like about his wide receivers here.
I mean, I think I really like, the fact that he got pieces in the Buccaneers receiving group. He got 3 of them. So he's going to have some starter at some point in time. Gage was a lot more intriguing before they signed Julio this offseason. So I don't know if he's really going to be relevant unless one of them goes down. But he got Godwin at a great value just because of the injury. And it sounds like he's getting back to somewhat near 100% health. I don't know he's going to be full Chris Godwin at any point this season. But, I think he got some really good values on that offense. And then the same thing with Gallup. Like, it sounds like he's probably not going to be ready for week 1. But when he comes back, he's going to be Dak's number 2 option. So I think that was a very good pickup. I really like Neal's receiving options, and that's why I ranked him number 3.
I like him too. Not much else to say on that, so I'm just going to move on to the tight ends. This is where I've got a question for Matt in particular, because it seems like both Mike and I kind of rated George Kittle number 7 in the tight end department. You got him ranked number 4. What do you really like about George Kittle this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, Kittle's a tough one because he's such a talented player. But, usage-wise, it hasn't really, worked out for him maybe the way fantasy owners would want, or, the way, his potential would you would think would dictate. But I still think that he's a really solid player. I still think that he could put up really good fantasy weeks. I still think that they value him in that offense, and he's going to be on the field a lot. And I think Freiermuth is underrated too. I mean, he's, I realize that you can only start one tight end really. I mean, unless you have like 2 elite guys, but I think Freiermuth is actually pretty good. And may end up being a guy who's a decent plug and play, especially if Kittle gets hurt. So there really is only a few great tight ends. If you don't get one of those top guys, I think Kittle's a tier down from them. But I ranked him as 4 because again, you're kind of outside those top guys, but you still have a solid guy. So
Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Or, I'd say we're in a league where you really only should be starting one tight end. And Neil got 3 of them. So that is a concern
I think
there.
McCarthy drafted 3 last year.
And Kittle,
too.
I was not at that draft, so I cannot be held responsible for the actions of my proxy.
No, McCarthy. McCarthy.
But
I'm pretty sure he drafted 3 last year
McCarthy
too.
did? I thought
I think
said,
your guy. I think your guy
4.
also drafted 3. Yeah.
He did, yes. But Kittle, talent-wise, is a top 4 tight end. There's no arguing that. The problem is that I think that he's going to be asked to block a lot, and just Trey Lance, I think, just has a propensity to look downfield, and that's not where Kittle's going to be hanging out. So he's one of the guys that I was talking about earlier. Like, honestly, I'm not saying that Komet's going to have a better season, but just ROI. I think Neil spent like $22 on George Kittle. Like, I would much rather have Cole Kmet for $1. So I don't know that Neil got the most bang for his buck with George Kittle. I don't think he is the guy that he was 3 years ago, and so that's why I gave him the 7th ranking.
Final thoughts on the Fat Gyms?
I think they're a much better team than 10th. I think I had them ranked like 5th or 6th maybe. I think it's a good team. I think that their receivers are really going to carry this team along with Joe Burrow. If he can get something out of one of his tight ends, and if Chubb can overcome the 8-man box, this team could do something.
Matt?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. I think this is probably not. It's a borderline playoff team. I would say probably at this moment, if I had to pick, I'd say he's probably not going to be in the postseason. But there's a lot of paths to success here, and Mike's right. I think it all kind of flows through the receiver group here.
That all sounds good to me. Like I said, I can't really add more than what you guys already said on this team. I think there's potential for all these teams in 6 through 14 to be playoff teams, but there's just questions like will this guy stay healthy, and will this depth hold up? But those are things that'll change throughout the season. So going on to number 9. One that I'm sure we're going to have different opinions on here, the Muppet Nation. Let's take a look at the quarterbacks first. Matt, break it down. You have the Nation actually ranked the best of the 3 of us at number 9.
Yeah, I like Muppet quarterbacks here. I guess I'm high on Herbert. Like, I think he's just a really good talent. I think they're going to be throwing a lot. They play in a tough division where I expect there to be a lot of points. When you're playing 6 games a year in that division and have to score, I think Herbert's going to be slinging it around the yard. I mean, last year I saw him make some throws that he's got that elite arm talent that I think very few players possess. So I like Herbert a lot, and I think the Chargers are going to be a pretty good offense again. So my ranking, reflects that in terms of the quarterback group. But behind that, it is a little slim. I mean, you have the Seattle group there, which probably is the worst quarterback group in the league. So at least you got them both. So you got somebody you can start every week, and then Trubisky has a tenuous hold on that starting job in Pittsburgh. So we don't know how many weeks we're gonna get out of him. So yeah, it's Herbert and kind of scraps afterward.
Mike, what do you like? What do you hate?
I like Justin Herbert, and I hate everyone else.
That seems to be the general consensus, and I'd say the same. That was not my goal to get Geno Smith or Drew Lock or Mitch Trubisky, but I got saddled there at the end with just Herbert and was struggling to find money for an extra quarterback. So I figured I might as well try to buy as many as possible for as little as possible, and that's why you see Geno Smith, Trubisky, and Locke on that team as well. Going to the running backs, only 3 here. I think this is the shortest depth that we've had so far. Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Kenneth Walker the third. Mike, let's start with you on this one. You've got them ranked 4th.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the top 2 at least are obviously great. Derrick Henry, if he can stay healthy this year, he's going to be the engine of that offense. They really don't have the receivers. I mean, they lost A.J. Brown, so they don't have the receiving abilities that they did last year. He may also be facing some pretty stacked boxes, but if there's any way they can overcome that, it's Tractor Cito here. And then Aaron Jones, I legitimately think there's a chance that he's the number 1 receiver on the Packers. And he's going to get all kinds of touches in the red zone. And, I was talking earlier about guys that Rodgers trusts. He trusts Aaron Jones. So I think he's in for a monster season. I think he got a great value. I think you paid like $30 for him. I think that was a great buy. So I love your running backs. They're very good. There's a few, maybe one that we mentioned earlier a team that I like their running backs better, but they're ranked 13th, unfortunately. And then we have Kenneth Walker. He's talented. I think he's going to struggle to take Penny off the field if Penny's healthy. That's the question, isn't it? I don't want any part of that offense, I guess would be what I want to say. And you seem to want to have their quarterbacks and their backup running back, but he's obviously a talent. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not he can really get to the point where he's getting enough touches that you feel comfortable starting him.
Yeah, Matt. Before you get into your ideas of the nation's running backs, I just wanted to point out that I was actually targeting Seattle backfield. I wanted both Penny and Walker, and the reason for that is because Seattle ran the ball more than any other team last year. And so I saw potential in the Seattle backfield for those guys going $5 or less. I think both those running backs went for $5 or less. So I really wanted to get one, if not both of them on my team. I couldn't snag Penny. But Kenneth Walker, I think, is a decent consolation prize. Matt, what are your thoughts on this backfield?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think it's, Henry is going to be a volume guy. I mean, he definitely is going to get his carries. I do worry about his workload because he's just had so many touches over the last few years that it's going to be hard to, keep him healthy and keep him going at a high rate. So there is a concern there. I have read a lot of tweets, multiple occasions about Aaron Jones being wide receiver 1 in Green Bay this year. So, what Mike said earlier about, being a trusted receiver in that offense, I think is definitely a possibility. So I think you may have a lot of, opportunities for high value touches with Aaron Jones. I read a stat somewhere online. I don't remember where it was, but basically in a PPR format, one target, not even a catch, one target is worth 2.7 carries. And if Aaron Jones can, have a target share that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game, I mean, it could be a massive, massive season for him. So I like the upside potential there. Actually, I like Kenneth Walker. I mean, there's a lot of talk about him being. Mike Leone talked a lot about how he was, really elite talent runner. And I don't really know much about evaluating running back talent in college and watching how they play and whether or not they're a good running back or not, but. I think there is some opportunity there as well, even if he is capped by the the offense that he will be running behind. So overall, good group, I would say.
Going over to the wide receivers, it looks like we're kind of all over the place on this, although we all agree that it could be better. Debo Samuel, Chris Olave, Drake London, Jarvis Landry, J.K. Osborne, and Sterling Shepard. Outside of Debo Samuel, Matt, what do you like on that wide receiver core?
I think it's actually
KJ
KJ
Osborne.
Osborne. I think I made a mistake there.
Yeah.
He's not just kidding Osborne, but
JK was KJ.
Yeah, I think it's KJ
It
Osborne.
is, yeah.
Anyway, so I think the big thing and the reason that I have this group probably rated a little higher than you guys do is I really like the young receivers that you ended up going with here with Chris Olave and Drake London. I think they are going to get a lot of targets. I think Olave is the number one target in New Orleans, despite what people may think about Michael Thomas. And I think Drake London's going to get fed plenty in Atlanta. So I like that group. I have huge questions about Debo Samuel because his efficiency was so great last year, and his ADOT was really low, and there's a lot of questions about him being able to replicate the season he had last year because of those statistics. But he's still very, very talented, so it doesn't mean that he can't still have really good games. Um, so I do like this group, but I like it more so for those younger receivers rather than the top end talent with Debo.
Mike, you have the Muppet wide receiver group ranked 13th. What do you hate about it?
I don't love Debo for a lot of the same reasons Matt said. You know, he was extremely efficient last year, and I think that they're going to stop giving those running back touches they gave him last season. They just paid him that ginormous contract, and they can't risk him getting those, extremely risky touches that are going to knock years off the end of his career. I also disagree with Matt. I don't think that Olave is going to be the wide receiver one in New Orleans. I think he's going to be good, but I still think that title belongs to Michael Thomas. I do think Drake London is going to be very good. He's a big body. I think that Mariota's going to have two ginormous targets to throw to, and Drake London's going to be one of them. So I think he'll be good. And KJ Osborne could, we were just talking about Thielen on Neil's team. He's getting older. He's definitely lost a bunch of steps. It's this point in time, he's essentially just a tight end, like catching touchdowns and plodding his way down the field because he's lost his biggest asset, which was his speed. So I could see KJ Osborne becoming the number 2 in Minnesota, which would be ideal for you. And Sterling Shepard, at this point in time, he may be one of the only 2 men left standing in the Giants receiving corps. So it may just be him and Wandale, although they've said that Tony's been practicing. So who knows? I think I have higher expectations for that offense than most people do. But yeah, Debo is your anchor, and I don't think that he's gonna put up the numbers that you need out of your wide receiver one.
I think it's interesting because I disagree with you guys on a lot of those things, but I still have this core ranked right where you guys have them ranked too. I agree with Matt that there's good potential here with the rookies, and I was targeting rookies specifically for that reason. Over the past, I think 4 or 5 years, there's been a wide receiver in the top 5. So I'm just trying to gather as many rookie wide receivers as possible there because they're one, cheap, and 2, there's a fairly good chance that they're going to become a top 5 or top 10 wide receiver. I really like Chris Olave a lot. I'm a big New Orleans Saints fan. Drake London, actually, you guys had high praise for. He's the one guy that I'm really, really concerned with. He hasn't been practicing. He hasn't been playing a lot in games, and the games that he does play, he gets hurt. So I'm really concerned about Drake London, and I do have a little bit of concern about Debo Samuel, but I do think San Francisco paid him a lot of money for a reason, and it's not to just be on the field. He's going to be getting touchdowns too, and in the end, that's what gets us the points. So that's my final thoughts on the wide receivers. Still have them kind of ranked in the middle there. I've got them at 11. The tight ends. who's got us best here? Me. I'm a big fan of Darren Waller. Taysom Hill is just sort of a shot in the dark, and Isaiah Likely also a shot in the dark. Another note here: I did draft O.J. Howard, who was released in exchange for Sterling Shepard after he got cut. So I'm okay with the tight ends there. Matt, what do you think?
I mean, Waller is one of those guys who you might put, towards the top end of, the tight end rankings. I do have concerns about him for a couple reasons. The first one being he is getting older. He's only been, if you want to call him an elite tight end, he's only been an elite tight end for 2-3 years, but I think he's in his late 20s now, if not 30. So he's getting to a point in his career where I think we have to be, kind of starting to pump the brakes a little bit on expectations with him. And then I think, a lot of where you make your money on tight ends is in the red zone. And, with the arrival of Devonta Adams, you do have to worry about the touchdowns going down. So that's why I took a little bit of a hit on this tight end group. But overall, still, certainly top half of the league.
Mike, how do you feel about Darren Waller? Would you want him on your team?
Well, I have Mark
If you didn't
Andrews,
have
so I'd say
Likely,
no.
Is he a fine option?
but-
What are your thoughts on Darren Waller?
Yeah, he's a fine. I mean, there's a reason. I mean, I didn't give you the number 5 ranking for Taysom Hill or Isaiah Likely. Like, I think Waller is going to be good. I do think, as I've said multiple times now, I do think that Raiders offense is going to be significantly better than it has been in the past. We'll talk about this when we get to my team, but I really think that the AFC West is just going to be shootout after shootout. Like, there's so many good offenses in that division. I just feel like every game is going to be just running up the score. So there's going to be points scored, and I think that the Raiders receivers are going to be, beneficiaries of that. But yeah, I of the 14 starting tight ends that we have in this league, like, I put Waller as my number 5. It's essentially how I just did my rankings, was just starting tight end and ranking.
Mike, you've got him the lowest 78.
Yeah, I honestly, Matt and I obviously value different positions differently, but I value wide receivers in this league very highly because you can start so many of them, and I don't love your wide receivers. So I think that Henry and Jones will be good. Obviously, I really like Justin Herbert, but there's not enough here for me to be excited about this team.
Matt, you have the nation rated the highest of the three of us.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I really do like these young receivers that Mike is not quite sold on at this moment. But I think if we revisit this towards the end of the year, I think we'll find that the nation is alive and well because Olave and London have been productive.
I'm trying to get that Steve Wilson award. That's the goal there. Chris Olave, Steve Wilson award. You can just write it down for January already. Just slot it in. Yeah, my overall feel on this team is it's not at all what I was aiming to do during the draft. I wanted to go, Mike, to back up your opinion on wide receivers. I wanted to go heavy on wide receivers. I was targeting people like Justin Jefferson and of course Mike Williams was on the list, and Deontay Johnson, but I ran out of money after I decided to try to pick up Henry and Jones at what I think were discounts. So I kind of pivoted my strategy mid-draft after getting Henry and decided to go running back heavy on this one. I don't think it's going to work out for me, but we'll see. That's all I can do is hope at this point.
Well, to give you a little bit of a feather in your cap, and one of the reasons I value running back this year a little bit more, I think I've kind of referenced this a little bit, but I do think running back is a little bit more of a position of scarcity in fantasy. I think there's a lot more good receivers than there are good running backs, and so when you can nab 2 of the top, certainly 14, but even top 10 running backs, I think that can, put you over the top if you can get some of your lower end receivers to hit, which I think is certainly a possibility for you. So, so yeah, I think the Muppets are definitely alive here.
Heading to the number 8 team, but by the way, Matt, if you took the average between you and Mike for the Rusty Truckers, you would actually end up right here at number 9. Muppet Nation would be bumped down to 10. But at number 8, you have the El Barbil CHARBBQs. I think this is the first team that we're seeing all of our ratings in the 80s. Let's take a look at the quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, 3 starting quarterbacks. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, there are 3 starters here, but there are 3 starters that are definitely big question mark. I actually really like Lawrence a lot, but not as a quarterback 1. He would definitely be a quarterback 2. On my list. I think he's definitely a guy that I think he has some upside and, could round out a roster if you've got, a better quarterback 1 option, a Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson or whoever you want to put up there. But Tannehill, Mike referenced earlier, Tennessee's offense is probably going to underperform. They really focus on this play action passing and yeah, Tannehill does have a little rushing upside, but I just think that they're going to struggle to score points this year. And then Carson Wentz, you don't know what you're going to get out of him every week. I think I mean, it was made abundantly clear by the way that the Eagles and the Colts handled him in the off seasons this past 2 years. He's just he's such a wild card, and it's hard to rely on him. So that's why I have this group rated towards the bottom of the league.
Mike, you've got him there too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Carson Wentz is a known duck murderer, so that.
So he goes down in your
yeah,
book.
he goes down. Well, he should go way up in Klein's list, but.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are kind of middle of the road, or probably bottom third guys, all 3 of them. Trevor Lawrence, who knows? They're doing their best to improve his receiving corps, but we need to see it first. I have stated my concern with the Tennessee offense, and I don't expect much of Carson Wentz. I mean, I do think having McKissick out of the backfield, having Dotson, and having why am I drawing a blank?
McLaurin.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin. I think it's going to be some talent, but I just, like Matt said, you never know what you're going to get out of Carson Wentz. So they're fine.
Well, the way I look at it is Carson Wentz is a bye week filler here. Lawrence and Tannehill are slotted in that OP and that QB spot. 16 or 17 out of 18 weeks, or 16 out of, how many weeks do we play? 17 now. So they're in their 16 out of 17 weeks.
I think we have 14 regular season weeks, right?
Okay, so you have 13 out of 14 weeks. You have Lawrence and or Tannehill in there. So I think that's fine. The thing that I don't like about this quarterback group is that not one of these guys is in the top 14 quarterbacks. I mean, there's 14 teams in this league. You would hope to get at least one top 14 quarterback. And I think all 3 of these guys, albeit starters, and he's got depth there, and they're probably going to put up, 10, 20 points a week, which is nice. There's just questions as to whether they're going to win you games. Going to the running backs, let's look at it. I've got them ranked the highest. I really like Najee Harris and James Conner. I think he got them both for practically steals, in my opinion. Najee Harris for $42 and James Conner for 16. I mean, Conner, I think, was a top 5 back last year. So that's why I have them ranked so high. Matt, you completely disagree with me on this. You've got them ranked near the bottom. Tell me why.
Well, you're going to get volume out of Harris. I mean, there's no question about that. But as I said before, Pittsburgh's offensive line is really bad. We talked about 8-man boxes when we were discussing Nick Chubb. I think we're going to get more of the same medication here with Najee Harris. He's going to have to really be very efficient, and he just does not break long runs. I think he was like one of the worst in the league of rushes over 10 and 20 yards last year. He's so touchdown dependent, and in an offense that I just am not sure about. I think there's a lot of questions there. Um, yeah, if they had made some strides to try to improve their offensive line, I may feel differently. I think Connor had a fluke year last year. I think he's fine, but I just don't see him replicating the output that he had last season. He had a couple big games where he caught like 11 balls, and I think those are outliers. That boosts your end of the year score quite a bit. McKissick's a good pass catching back, but it's a committee, and the offense isn't really that good. So I don't really see him being like a guy who moves the needle. So I mean, this group is a below average group to me.
Mike, you've got them kind of ranked high-ish, top 5.
Yeah, they're fine. I don't expect Najee to have the same numbers he had last year. Big thing that pumped up his numbers was the fact that Ben just couldn't throw 10 yards downfield, so he was just dumping off to him like 8 times a game. Yeah, and like Matt said, their offensive line is really bad. And Mitchell Trubisky's not scaring anybody, so he is going to be facing some pretty stacked boxes. But I actually like Connor. I agree that I think he got. Well, I disagree when you said that Najee went for a steal for $42. That's I would not qualify $42 as a steal for just about anybody, other than maybe Jonathan Taylor, who we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I apologize for that. When I said he went for a steal, I had thought that he went for less before I looked at the number. When you're comparing it, that Derrick Henry went for 41, and Aaron Jones went for 30, and you're getting Najee Harris for 42. Not quite a steal, but still, he's got solid running backs.
yeah, no, I think Connor's gonna be good. I think, they shipped Chase Edmonds out of town. I think, Benjamin's okay, but I don't really think he's gonna be scaring or taking any touches away from James Conner. So I have high expectations for the Cardinals offense, and
All three of us
yeah, I
have
think it'll be
the
good.
CHARBBQ's wide receivers in the top 10. Who's got them ranked the lowest here? Matt, what don't you like about the wide receiver core?
Well, there are several players I could select from this list that I really don't like. Kenny Galladay could be dropped right now, probably. Marvin Jones Jr., I think is aging. I think he's probably, option number 4 in that receiving core. Curtis Samuel, I haven't really seen regain anything. So depth wise, I just skip the whole thing about these backup receivers. Depth, I don't really see playing much of a role here. I think Brandon Cooks is really underrated. I think he's a good option here. I think, one of the more solid receivers in the league, and he kind of, perpetually goes undervalued because he's on a bad team, but he's really good. I'm not as big a Deontay Johnson guy. I just don't feel like he is going to be as good this year as he was when he was getting force fed by Roethlisberger every week. I think there is going to be some drop off there, and we're going to see some distribution to some different players, including Pickens. Chase obviously is what he is. I mean, he's one of the most talented receivers in the league, so you have to acknowledge that. This is a middle of the road group because I don't have a lot of faith in the guys behind Chase and Cooks. Those are really the guys I think that are keeping this group alive.
Mike, you got to have a little bit of a different opinion. You have this core ranked 5.
Yeah, so I ranked, as I stated starters are much more important to me. So Jamar is a top 3 talent at wide receiver in the league. So he's my buoy for Steve's team here. I like Deontay. I don't really think that the quarterback is really going to affect him that much. I can see why you're concerned about Pickens, but I think that he's really going to take more targets away from Claypool than anything. And he not like Ben's really had a rocket arm for the last couple of years, and he still put up great numbers. So I think he's going to be still very good. And like you said, Brandon Cooks, year in and year out, nobody really ever bids a lot of money on him, but he's always like a top 20-ish wide receiver every year. And Davis Mills looks for him all day, every day. So they have to throw the ball to somebody, and it's either going to be him or Nico Collins. And if I had to pick one of the two, I would pick Brandon Cooks. So Kenny Golladay has been described as moving like a mannequin the last couple of days by New York Giants beat reporters. That sounds accurate. I was shocked to hear Terrence Marshall Jr.'s name called at the draft. So he can also be added to the list of guys that can be dropped, I would say, at this point in time. But as far as the starters go, I think Steve's got a pretty solid crew.
Here, I had Jamar Chase as the number 1 wide receiver in the league. He had an excellent year last year. I think he ended up being number 2 behind Kupp. And we both, or all of us, kind of expressed concerns of Kupp just not being able to achieve the same numbers that he had last year. If he does, amazing, incredible. But I think Jamar Chase is the guy. If between the two of those guys, he's the one that has room to grow. So I think Jamar Chase is the number 1 wide receiver in the league. And then Steve also added on Deontay Johnson and Brandon Cooks. And I think those are 2 solid wide receivers to start. I mean, Johnson, yeah, we talked a little bit about the concern, new quarterback and everything, but we also talked about how Ben Roethlisberger couldn't throw the ball 10 yards down the field last year, and Deontay Johnson still put together, I think, a top 20 wide receiver campaign. So
Top 10.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go down from that. I think if anything, a change at quarterback might actually be refreshing for Deontay Johnson, but anytime you see a change at quarterback, there's going to be questions as to whether you can maintain that efficiency. So yeah, I guess that is a little bit of a question mark, but I've still got confidence that Johnson's going to put together a top 10, top 20 performance this year. And then you got Jamar Chase. Come on, that's a really good wide receiver core to me. So moving along to the tight ends, this one again, we're kind of all over here, and I think it comes down to where do you put T.J. Hawkinson, Mike? Where you've got him ranked 10.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I just don't think T.J. Hawkinson is very good, and he's shown us that time and time again. I think he's going to be the probably 3rd option in that receiving game, and possibly the 4th once Jameson Williams comes back. And I don't think he's very good. It's another guy that I would gladly take Cole Kmet over him. And I don't know. I just don't think he's very good.
I've got him ranked number 5. I actually like T.J. Hawkinson. I think he's shown a lot of potential here. And Matt, you've got him just behind my ranking at number 8.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Mike has said about Hawkinson. I mean, he was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, and he really hasn't come around the way that I think Detroit thought that he would. He's not really been an impactful player in their offense yet. I still do hold out some hope that he can be, a game changer, but the clock is ticking at this point. It's now or never for him.
Final thoughts on this team. Let's start with you, Mike.
Solid team. I think
Matt?
borderline playoff team.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lower than you guys on this team. I have some serious questions about the quarterback backs. I'm certainly not anywhere near as high as you guys are on the running backs. The receivers are clearly the best group here on this team, and I think you guys do agree with me on that point. But I don't see this team being a playoff team.
Yeah, I like the receivers a lot. I like the running backs a lot. The tight end is okay, and the quarterbacks are meh. So that's kind of where I got my ranking from. I value wide receivers a lot in this league because you can plug and play them just about anywhere. But Matt, to your point, there's a lot of wide receivers out there too that are also likable. So where this team ends up, nobody knows. I think he'll be in some tight games, but I think in the end he's got a shot to the playoffs. Going to number 7, right? We're at number 7 here. Rafi Bombs showing up with an overall grade of 84.3, but none of us are really high on his quarterbacks. Matt, break it down for us.
Yeah, this is a similar group to the one we just talked about a minute ago. Where you do have 3 of them, but none of them are really moving the needle. I think Matt Ryan is a solid quarterback, but he's going to be playing at a run first offense. I do think they're going to throw the ball more this year than they did last year. So I do think there is some relative upside here, but you're not going to see Matt Ryan running the ball. I don't think you're going to see him throwing 40 touchdowns. So and then behind him you've got Baker, who is still a question mark. And Zach Wilson is an even bigger question mark in my opinion. So it's 3 starters, but it's 3 starters that are really not exciting.
Mike, is there a quarterback on this team that you think is worth holding on to or has potential here?
I mean, I think they're all worth holding on to. It
Right.
is a 2 QB league, but yeah, I think Matt Ryan will be fine. I have questions about Baker, and Zach Wilson may need to win his job back from Joe Flacco, which is always concerning at this point of his career. But yeah, I think Pittman and Campbell and the other guys that they have, Mo Alley Cox may have a standout season this year. So I actually think the Colts are going to be much more pass heavy than they were last year. I think that they realize that being a run heavy offense really caps their ceiling and how far they can go. So I think Matt Ryan is going to have a good year.
Yeah, I like, in comparing this to the previous team, the CHARBBQs, I like this set of quarterbacks a little bit better. I see Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield having a bit more upside. Mayfield, I don't think was ever really a bad quarterback. I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong on that, but I don't think he was ever really horrible in Cleveland, and now he's going to Carolina, where I think he's got just as much of a chance to succeed there. So I think there's solid upside here for Rafi Bombs.
He was pretty bad last year.
Yeah, he wasn't good last year, but
He
showed
had a pretty
potential
significant shoulder injury though. Like
Yeah.
he played hurt a lot last year. I mean I do buy that. I do buy that there may be something left in the tank with Baker. I think he's a super motivated and competitive player. I don't know if he's really all that talented. He doesn't have a great arm. But maybe a change of scenery is just what he needs, and maybe this is time for him.
I think there's a shot there for him. We'll see how the season plays out. The running backs here, really, I think we all agree, a really solid team of running backs with Eckler, Kamara, Carter, Gainwell, Williams, and Ingram. Mike, what do you like most about these running backs?
I mean the Eckler Kamara combo is pretty tough to beat.
1-2 punch.
Yeah. And then he's got, some interesting pieces behind it. At this point in time, it seems like Michael Carter is ahead of Breece Hall in the depth chart. So I don't know how long that's going to be the case for, but we'll see. And Gainwell could very well be the starting running back in maybe the best offense in the NFC. Miles Sanders is a real question mark at this point in time, and Boston Scott is Boston Scott. So, I could easily see him having taken that spot by the middle of the season. Not really interested in Jamal Williams or Mark Ingram, but he's got 3.5, viable options here. 2 easy starts every week, so I think he's got a very strong running back group.
Matt, you've got them ranked just behind Mike at number 3.
Yeah, these guys all catch the ball, which is huge. I mean, being able to have the PPR points added on to your running back group rather, is just so important. So yeah, I think Eckler and Kamara are really really good running backs. I don't feel as good about them this year as I have in years past. But I still think when you compare this to the rest of the league, I think this group is certainly one of the better ones.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I've got them ranked lowest of you guys, and I don't know why they're number 5 because Eckler and Kamara is a hell of a 1-2 punch, and I'm a big Michael Carter fan too. I think he kind of got the short end of the stick there when they drafted Breece Hall. So we'll see how that pans out over the season. But I think Michael Carter is a solid plug there. Wide receivers. It looks like Matt and I have them both top 5, and Mike, you have them just outside at number 8. So, Mike, tell us why you're not as hot on this wide receiver core as maybe Matt or myself.
I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I do think that Keenan Allen is possibly on the way down. And Michael Thomas hasn't caught a ball in almost 2 years. So I have my concern. I still think he's wide receiver 1 over Olave in New Orleans. But, I think obviously Pittman, I think is third-year breakout. He's going to have a great season. Not a bad guy to have as your wide receiver 1. But I'm more interested in Dotson and Williams. Obviously, Williams is going to be out for a while. But a lot of people have considered him like the most talented receiver in this rookie class, based on their college performance. So I do think that'll be interesting when he comes back. And Dotson's made a lot of headlines, in training camp. So I think that's all based on how Carson Wentz is going to be. But I think it's more of the name value that maybe stands out to people than like actual value this year. Just to me, I don't think that Keenan is going to dominate catches and targets this year. And I obviously Jameis is a big step down from Drew Brees. So I think they're going to be good, I just don't think that they're going to be dominant.
Matt, what do you think of this Colts stack here? He's got Ryan and Pittman.
It's a ballsy flag plant that he's put forth here. He wouldn't be the guy I would have thought would do it, but I'm happy to see that Rafi Bombs will be putting on his Colts hat on Sunday and rooting for Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman Jr. I agree with Mike that Pittman is pretty solid. I know he's kind of the guy that everybody's beating the drum on this year in fantasy circles, and he's been a name that has really popped up a lot this year as being like the guy to draft. I still don't know if he's. I don't know. I don't think I'm putting him in my top 10 in fantasy receivers yet. I still think he's kind of a lower end wide receiver 1. But I just think there's a lot of potential here. I mean, I still think Keenan Allen is in that offense still very valuable. He's still going to get a lot of balls, a lot of targets. I think Chargers offense is still going to have to be really, pass heavy and slinging the ball in the division that they play in and needing to score points. And Allen's going to be right in the middle of that. I really like the bottom 3 receivers on this list here: Nico Collins, Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams. I think there's a ton of potential there for one of those guys to break out, and that's what you need to win a fantasy league is one of these kind of lower end guys to spike. And I think Rafi gives himself a really good chance to make some noise because of the the long shot receivers that he has selected. So interested to see how that pans out for him.
Yeah, I like his wide receiver core. Obviously, Pittman is the golden boy here. So he's a solid pick. Allen, I'm not as concerned about Keenan Allen as maybe you are, Mike, because when you look at the Chargers offense, you're looking at Allen, Mike Williams, who I talked about before. He's very boomer bust. I think he's very game planned. And then you have Josh Palmer, where even if Allen were to get hurt, I think that really hurts the Chargers look. And so I think Allen plays a vital role in that Chargers offense, and I think he's still a solid wide receiver this year. Going to the tight ends, none of us like this tight end group of Irv Smith or Brevin Jordan. This mixture of who do I play in the TE position this week. Matt, do you have any interesting thoughts on Irv Smith or Brevin Jordan?
I love Brevin Jordan actually. In fact, Rafi, when you watch this, let's talk trade. I know you got him for like $1, and I don't think I outbid you because I had some other targets I wanted. But I would totally make a move for Brevin Jordan, for minimal return. I think he's solid. I don't know. I think he's good. But I mean, whatever. This group is not like special.
Maybe we can get a live trade on the SHODcast. That would be great someday. We'll have to have Rafi Bombs on. Final thoughts on this team. Mike, you have them at 81, the lowest of the three of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, I don't love his quarterbacks, obviously. Running backs are good. Wide receivers are middle of the pack. I think I don't remember where I had him ranked, but again, like a borderline playoff team.
Matt, you've got him ranked high at 89.
Yeah, I like this team. I mean, my rankings, my number rankings were higher than you guys across the board. So when you see the 89, it's not. I don't think it's like a spectacular number, but it certainly is in the upper half of the league. And I think this is a solid team. Like I look throughout this roster and I see, a team that has good starters, good depth. It's gonna be a tough, formidable opponent week in and week out. So I think Rafi Bombs is pretty solid.
Yeah, nothing more to add to that. I think solid team, playoff team, or at least on that fringe. I think 7 is a great place to rank Rafi Bombs. Looking at number 6 is the number 8, Van Buren Boys. Mike, you had them ranked really high. You're high on them. Matt, you're pretty high on them with an 89 as well. And then there's me. I
Hate them.
just
the Russian judge.
I actually told Grizz that there's a lot I do like on his team that I'd like to trade for. But I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's take a look at the quarterbacks here with Brady, Wilson, Fields, and Darnold. Matt, what are your thoughts on that tandem?
This group is sexual and violent, in my opinion. I just think they have the great floor, great ceiling. You got 3 of them with a guy who has a ton of rushing upside in Fields. When you have one of these guys on a bye, I mean, I don't have them ranked number 1, but I could easily have them ranked number 1. I think this is a really good quarterback group. It's just stellar job drafting with the quarterbacks by Kevin this year.
Mike, you've got them ranked number 4. You like that Brady Wilson duo?
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously only start 2 of them, but I think that's a great combo. And having Fields, like Matt said, having that rushing upside, and yeah, we don't expect much from that offense, but it doesn't mean that he can't be productive and put up points with his feet. So yeah, I think it's a great group.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think the only reason why I've got them ranked slightly lower than you guys, by the way, is because of Russell Wilson. I still have a lot of questions over him. He didn't have a great year last year, and then Denver just kind of goes out and blows a load on him. I I don't know how that's going to turn out yet. So I'm just not confident on Russell Wilson. That's why I've got them slightly lower. The running
I love
backs.
Russ. Love him this year.
Yeah, and I know
Love him.
I'm going against
Love.
the totally against the wave on it. There's just a feeling that something about Russell Wilson in a Broncos jersey just doesn't look right to me. I don't know.
You like
Uh,
fish stick?
Fish sticks?
That's right. Grizz, trade me Russ Wilson, Grizz.
Straight up for
Yes.
the,
for Davis Mills.
Wilson.
the running backs here, however, we all agree he needs some work, and he's going to struggle to fill that spot week in and week out. Matt?
Was this one of the ones that you said was better than me? I
No.
can't say. No.
No.
Oh, okay. One of the two that wasn't. All right. So first of all, these are all backups. So that's I guess
Rashad Penny's a starter.
yeah. So
Supposedly.
right. I mean, yeah. So okay. All right. Let's say Rashad Penny starts. AJ Dillon does still have some standalone value even as a backup. I think he still touches the ball a ton and scores some touchdowns this year. But I think Damian Harris is probably not the best running back in that offense. Rex Burkhead is droppable. So I think that there's no star here. I think there's AJ Dillon is a maybe borderline RB1. Maybe he gets there, but probably RB2. Penny probably RB2. So I mean, I think that's why we're all kind of towards the low end here on the spectrum with this group.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I Grizz clearly didn't prioritize running back. You only have to start one of them. I think one of these four will be serviceable every week. Penny probably the first couple games of the season until he gets hurt inevitably. I mean, Harris technically isn't a backup. He's more of in a timeshare with Stevenson. So he could obviously lose that job, and Dillon may be the most valuable backup because he does have standalone value. I also disagree that Burkhead's droppable. I mean, Damian Pierce is unproven at this point in time. And I do think they're going to bring him in passing down. So in a PPR league, he's fine. They've shown in the past they like to bring him in around the goal line too. So who knows? He's not a bad fourth running back to have. They're not highly ranked, but Grizz obviously didn't care about running back, and again, he only has to start one of them.
Yeah, I got similar thoughts. He just needs a starting running back. I actually don't mind his running backs. I like both Dillon and Penny, and I'd love to have either of them. But part of the reason why I see the Van Buren boys as a good trade partner for me is because I've got Jones and Walker, and he's got Dillon and Penny, and I hate seeing starting running backs and their backups on different teams. So him and I have been trying to work out a deal on that, but I don't think anything's going to happen. That's why I'm mentioning it here. So I do see potential in those running backs. He just needs something more there. So I think there could be a trade coming down, maybe mid-season or after week 3 when all the trades usually happen. I think there's potential there to make a move because I really do like his wide receiver core. I know I don't have them ranked high, but I think there's potential there. So let's talk about that. Matt or Mike, you actually have them ranked very high at number 4. You're liking the Brown, Mooney, Kirk, Valdez, Scantling, Hopkins, Boyd, Cobb, all those guys. Basically,
Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys were looking at here with your 11th rankings. Like AJ Brown is going to be an absolute monster in Philly. Darnell Mooney is going to get peppered with targets. Same thing with Kirk in Jacksonville. Like, yeah, maybe they're not like the sexiest names, but in a PPR league, I think they're going to get like just loaded with targets. And then after week 6, DeAndre Hopkins is coming back. Tyler Boyd, yes, he's the third man, but he's the third man in like a very pass-heavy and really good offense. And then Like, what else do you need? Like, I think that's 4 good receivers and then like a 5th serviceable one. So, in my mind, those top 3 are very good,
Matt?
based on what I've seen.
Well, for a guy who doesn't care about depth at all, you certainly had lots to say about this receiver depth.
Well, he's only going to start. He's only starting. He's only
Sure.
going to
Well,
start one
so
running back
AJ, I
based
agree with you on
his
AJ Brown.
group.
I mean, super talented, one of the best in the league. Top 5 receiver for sure. Step up, honestly, probably in this offense than he was in Tennessee. I think I think Philly's going to try to throw the ball more. I think Sirianni is wanting to do that. He's definitely more of a kind of forward-thinking, offensive-minded coach rather than what Mike Vrabel was. So I think Brown is poised for a massive season. I'd love to have him on my team. Grizz, hit me up. I think Mooney is a real concern. I think Mooney may have been a little bit of a flash in the pan last year. I don't know. As a receiver one against a lot of teams, I just don't think he is going to. I don't know if I see the targets being like as big. He strikes me as kind of a deep threat game breaker type player, and I just don't know if they're gonna have time to throw the ball to him.
Where's the ball going in that offense?
I'm not saying that he's not
going to
the
the
option.
punter.
He is the best receiver on that team. He's the number one option, but I guess I'm just so down on them and their ability to be able to push the ball down the field and score points that I just think as a wide receiver too, it's very underwhelming. Kirk I think is probably the best argument for the second receiver. They paid him a lot of money. I think that Jacksonville's offense is trending up. I think there's something to be said for that. Scantling is a gamble. I mean, do you get can you guess which weeks he's going to get the 70-yard touchdown from Mahomes?
I didn't even.
I guess is going to be the question there. Hopkins, yeah. I mean, I don't know about Hopkins. I don't know if he's like. I mean, he is getting older and he's not fast. I mean, he's probably one of the best jump ball receivers in the league, and I guess that's where his value lies. But I mean, he's missing half the season, so how much do we get out of him? I just it's Brown for me, and after that, it's a bunch of questions.
So for me, to go off the Mooney comment, I feel the same way about Mooney as you do, Matt. I think the ball runs through the punter in Chicago. So I don't know, I'm just not as comfortable with him, although he did put up solid numbers throughout the year last year. So I think he's a good plug there. Kirk again, he has potential but unproven. MVS only played 1 game last year and scored I think he had 1 catch and that was it. So MVS has a lot of
I'm sm-
questions.
I'm smelling a Mooney receptions bet. Okay.
I was going to propose the same thing. And maybe not reset, but so you put a number ranking or what ranking is it going to be at the end of the
Mooney?
year? Yeah, over under.
I would say probably. I would say 34.
So
You
Okay,
want to go
I'll take
over
that.
under 34? So if he's under, what do you want to
Yeah.
bet?
Another
So
another
golf
box
balls
of golf
again?
balls.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Unless
that's
you wanna do
fine. We'll
something
do golf
different.
what
balls.
kind of golf balls are these? Are they Nike, Top Flight? That matters.
Dealer's choice. It'll be dealer's choice.
Oh, dealers. Ooh, that's nice.
Whatever the guy wants, you get him.
That's nice.
Might
Yeah,
slide.
noodle.
Just to wrap up some final thoughts on wide receivers, I really, really like Tyler Boyd. Underrated part of that offense, I think. If you looked at his numbers last year, he was getting at least 10 points just about every single week, despite being the third wide receiver in that offense. So I think Tyler Boyd is sneaky good in that position. I think he might actually be a starter week in, week out. looking at the tight ends, I think this is really interesting to talk about Travis Kelce because we all have him ranked top 3, but in different positions. Matt, you've got Kelce as your TE number 1.
Yeah, until proven otherwise. I mean, this guy is a freak talent. He's just such a good route runner. He and Mahomes have such a good rapport together. We haven't seen him drop off the cliff yet. I mean, I know he's aging. He's gonna hit that point at any moment. But I think with Tyreek Hill departing, it's only gonna put more stress on Kelsey and more targets in his wheelhouse. So I think Kelsey is the tight end one. I really like him this year a lot.
I also like Kelce. I've got him as the tight end number 2, but I do want to make a point here because it was brought up on several different tight ends that we've gone over so far about their age and how age is a concern right around 30. Well, Travis Kelce's 32. Um, Kittle is, I believe, 28. And Waller is 29. He's going to be 30 next week, I think, on the 13th. I looked up his birthday. He's going to be 30 this month. So you still have Kelce ranked number 1 despite that age. I don't want to call it an issue, that age concern.
Yeah, he's a freak.
Well, I've got him number 2. My number 1 we'll see in the next slide. It was Mark Andrews, and Mike, you've got him at number 3. I'm guessing you had Andrews above him and Pitts.
That's correct. Obviously, Kelsey's still going to get his this year, but towards the end of the regular season last year, he kind of became like not a full-time player. So that is concerning. I think that's directly correlated with his age. I think he really benefited from Hill taking the top off the defense and leaving that intermediate area wide open for him. And so I think he's really going to miss Tyreek. He's obviously going to be the focus of opposing defenses, which I think is also going to work to his detriment. But obviously he's still my number 3. I still think he's going to be great. I obviously would have been happy to have him as well. But Andrews was my number 1.
Mike, you've got this team rated 91, which is 2 points above your own team. So you're liking the Van Buren boys.
Yeah, I think they're the second best team in the league. I would love to hear why you have them ranked as 78.
I've got them ranked 78. I think just because of the running back question marks, the wide receiver question marks, and then just my odd hatred for Russell Wilson this year. I just don't want any part of Russell Wilson. I don't know why. It's just a hunch.
Okay.
So yeah, I can't really explain why I've got him ranked so low there. Because I think he does have a solid team, and I think there's a lot of things that can happen that can make his team better, and there aren't many things that can happen that would make his team worse. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like this team overall. Like we've talked about the questions about running back, but we've all kind of gone over that he's only going to be starting one every week, so it's not like it's going to hurt him that much. I think the big question mark comes with where his receivers are after AJ Brown. If he can figure that out, if he can get some good production out of these other guys, if I lose my bet on Mooney, then I think Van Buren boys are going to be good.
Heading into number 5, the top 5 in the show is Heights team. Lafferty, Daniel. Quarterbacks, a little bit of a concern, I guess. Maybe middle of the back of the road with Carr, Jones, and Malik Willis. Mike, let's start with you. Why'd you draft Carr, Jones, and Willis? Were they guys that you were targeting?
They definitely were not the guys that I was targeting, but the guys that I was targeting went for a lot more than I was expecting. Trey Lance was my number 1 target this season, and he went for $38. So I was not willing to spend that much on him. Derek Carr was the last of my must-haves. We've talked about the Raiders' offense quite a bit so far, but I just really think that they're just going to take it to the next level. And like I said, I really think that the AFC West is going to be a shootout after shootout. And I'm pretty sure they play the NFC West this year, which I think is going to also lead to more shootouts. I just think it's going to be a lot of good offenses playing against each other this year. He and Adams went to college together, so I think that connection is going to be there right away. And then, moving on to Daniel Jones, Matt can attest that he's obviously a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to his fantasy output, but I really do think that the addition of Brian Dable is really going to take that Giants offense to the next level. Joe Judge was just not a good coach, and I think Dable, obviously he's not going to take him to the level of Josh Allen, but I do think that he's going to be a more efficient and better runner. I think that if Tony can stay healthy, the guy is an absolute, just electric factory. And if he can get the ball in his hands, and Wan'Dale's not a big dude, but he does get open quite a bit. He's not a good option. Dump offs to Saquon, who's obviously can do things once he gets the ball, and he seems to love Sterling Shepard. So I think as long as his wide receivers can stay healthy, if Saquon can stay on the field, yes, I'm not expecting ginormous output from this Giants offense, but I think Daniel Jones can at least give me enough. And then Malik Willis, I took a long shot on him. He's looked awesome during this preseason. I don't expect much of this Tennessee Titans offense, but if they struggle the first 5 or 6 games of the season, there's no reason to keep Tannehill in there. They owe him a ton of money if they have him on the roster next season. And if he's not the answer, there's no reason to pay him that kind of money. So you might as well see what you have in Willis and then make a determination from there.
Matt, you've got this group ranked near the bottom. You don't like Derek Carr too much, huh?
Well, first, let me say I love the Willis pick. I think that's a great way to get some good value out of a guy that may be, pretty fantasy viable towards the back end of the season. I agree with everything Mike said about that. As for the Carr situation, yeah, I don't know. Their offensive line is pretty bad. They're not going to be able to run the ball effectively, and I think they're going to see themselves in a lot of 3rd and longs. And I do think Carr is a good quarterback. I don't know if I'm as high on their offense as I am on the other offenses in that division. So I do worry about Carr, and he really doesn't bring any rushing upside, very minimal. So, and Daniel Jones, there's been a lot of talk this offseason about, is he even the starter? I do think he is going to be the starter. I think he's going to play all year. And I do think that he's going to be in a better situation than he was last year. I just don't know. I don't see a lot of upside with this quarterback group. I may have been a little harsh with the 13th place overall. That's a little bit low, probably.
Should I be bitter for the rest of the SHODcast
Yes,
too?
Absolutely.
you certainly can. There's not much left, so you certainly can. Although I do think my bitterness is relatively justified. But no, I think Daniel Jones is he's got some rushing upside. So I don't know. Maybe this team is 10th or 11th in quarterbacks, but not great.
Yeah, Mike, I like what you said about Dable coming in the offense, but in the end, I don't think it's going to matter because that team is the season hasn't even started yet, and I don't think they have a single healthy wide receiver. So there's just a lot of questions about that Giants team. I think they could potentially be the worst in the league. Daniel Jones has an injury history too. I don't think he's played a single full season. So I just think there's a lot of questions about quarterbacks there. And that's why I've got them ranked 9th. I do like Derek Carr though. So I think Carr will be a solid player year long. The running backs, Matt, you've got him ranked dead last with the Melvin Gordon Ramondre Stevenson tandem there. If that's what's going to come to fruition, I'm guessing height, and I'll actually have you go first and explain your running back decision. But I'm guessing you're only planning on starting to one running back.
You are certainly correct, Sean. And I don't know if they're the 14th ranked group. I actually really like Ramondre. It sounds like he's already taken the upper hand in the backfield in New England. Not that I'm expecting big things from that offense, but and with James White retiring, with Ty Montgomery with some sort of injury, we don't really know what it is. It sounds like Ramondre is going to be in on the passing down. So I think he's going to be my starter at the beginning of the season. Melvin Gordon, yes, Javonte is obviously the supreme talent in that backfield, but it sounds like the Broncos don't really agree. And it sounds like he's going to be getting a lot of goal line touches. So even if he is a plug, if he's getting plug touches near the goal line for $4, why not? So I'm happy with Gordon, but we'll talk about the reason why I'm not happy that I drafted him in a couple slides. But for $4, I was happy to draft him. Pacheco, that's kind of just a lottery pick right there. It's CEH is, going back to what I said about Hockenson, when somebody shows you who they are, trust them. Like, CEH is who he is. He's just not ever going to be that guy. And in an offense that, yes, they lost Hill, but I'm still expecting them to be great because of who their quarterback is. I want a piece of that. And I do think Pacheco is going to be getting touches, maybe not dominating the backfield, but I think he's going to be getting some touches. And, if he shows, he's super fast. And, I think that's the thing that Andy Reid looks for more than anything is a guy that can get into space and beat guys. And I think Pacheco checks that box. And so I do think as the season progresses, he's going to earn more and more touches. And then Eno Benjamin, it was just kind of like another shot in the dark. He is the number 2 in Arizona. James Conner has a long injury history. I think, it's not likely he's going to hold up for an entire season. So, again, another good offense that, I wanted a piece of. Connor's not been getting 100% of the touches out there. So again, took another shot on a guy that I expect to be injured at some point in the season. And as Sean said, I'm starting one of these guys because of my wide receivers. So I'm really not worried about my 14th ranking. I don't think they are the 14th worst, but
Matt, what's
whatever.
The silver lining in this running back mosh here between Stevenson, Gordon, Pacheco, and Benjamin?
I really like Stevenson, actually. I think that he's the better running back in that group. I think he's probably, the best running back in New England. But, when you look at these backs, they're all timeshare backs at best. So you don't really have a guy who you can rely on to carry the load. But you don't have to when you have, a good receiving core, which Mike does. So it doesn't hurt him that bad. That's why we rank these teams based on the overall team, not just one position group. And I think one of the reasons why our rankings differ so significantly is because you guys all kind of ranked tight end very heavily, and I didn't give a crap about tight end. So, you guys had kind of elevated a lot of teams that had good tight ends and kind of knocked down teams that didn't. And I think, running back and tight end is, I think we view those positions very differently. So, I'm seeing running backs as kind of being more valuable, whereas you guys are seeing tight ends more valuable, and that's just beauty in the eye of the beholder. So this group, I think it lacks upside. I think there's really not a lot. Stevenson is intriguing, but beyond him, I think Pacheco's a lot of hype, but I don't think we're going to really see much out of him, honestly. Like Mike said, he's a lottery pick. If it works out, it works out. But he's starting one of them. It's not a big deal.
So I guess my counter to what you said, Matt, would be if you only have to start one, why do you value running back so much more?
Why?
over tight end?
Because I think running backs in general are better athletes. They touch the ball more. They have typically higher touchdown upside. Obviously, some of the elite tight ends can get you 10 plus touchdowns, but it's very rare to get that from a tight end. Whereas with running backs, you have multiple running backs on your team that can have more than 10 touchdowns. So I just think it's the other thing too is with running backs, I think there's more good ones.
Yep.
So when you have the ability to be able to stash 3, 4 good running backs, the depth of your team is a little bit better, and you can make up for an injury. Whereas with tight end, because there's only 3 elite ones, if your tight end 1 goes down, like that's a huge knock to your team.
But I think what you just said like works to my advantage because I see tight ends, a good tight end is such an advantage if we're using baseball terminology like using WAR. Like a good tight end is going to score so much more than some plug that you're putting in there. Whereas I feel like you can find, especially in a PPR league, you can find a running back that's going to be serviceable. And yes, he's not going to put up what the top end guys that are catching balls and running the ball are going to do, but I just feel like the amount of points that a good tight end is putting up over the 12th ranked tight end is much more of a gap.
This conversation too, because I want to echo what Mike said. I value tight ends quite a bit for that reason, because there is only about 5 of them that you really want on your team. It makes it so much more important to me to have one of those top 5 tight ends, because it's a position that needs to be filled. And if you're not filling it with one of those top 5 guys, you're basically filling it with someone who's going to get you maybe 5 points a week. And to me, that's just not enough to make a team run. So I value tight ends quite a bit too. And again, Mike, I agree with you. You can plug in running backs here and there that'll get the job done. Meanwhile, if your tight end goes down, if Mark Andrews becomes unavailable, it becomes so difficult to replace him. That's why I do value those top 5 tight ends. Looking at the wide receivers, this is where, Mike, I think we all agree you really made your living on draft day. Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, Brandon Ayuk, Rondale Moore, Isaiah McKenzie, Romeo Doubs, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Kyle Phillips. Outside of Justin Jefferson, Mike, who was the guy on that roster that you really, really wanted to get?
I mean, it was Sutton and Ayuk are both guys that I set out to get. Like I said earlier, Gabe Davis is my white whale, the one that got away. But I love Sutton this year. Matt and I were just discussing, how big of a difference it's going to be to have Russ in Denver, and everything coming out from camp reports and things people are writing is just saying that he's looking for Sutton over Judy all day, every day. So I love Cortland Sutton. I think he's going to be the alpha in Denver. And then as far as Ayuk goes, I mean, it sucks to hear Klein, but I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 this year in San Francisco. As I was saying, Lance has a tendency to look deep. He likes to use his big arm. That's Ayuk's bread and butter is taking the deep shot. So I'm expecting big things out of him. And then just moving down the – go ahead.
I really like Ayuk, by the way. He was one of the guys that I was heavily targeting in my draft, and I think you and I actually got into a bidding war for him, and I just ran out of money and didn't have enough to outbid you on it.
I think he only went for $10. So
I ran out of cash fast, man. Money doesn't stick around.
Yeah. But Rondale, going back to wanting pieces of good offenses, with Kirk leaving to go to Jacksonville, and with Hopkins out for the first 6 games of the season with suspension, like there's a lot of targets out there. Last year was really weird. They his average depth of target was like 1 yard downfield. It was very strange the way that they tried to use him last year. I'm hoping that Kingsbury is going to, find a better way to get him involved in the offense. So I think I'm intrigued by Rondale. Isaiah, with Cole Beasley out of town, Crowder,
Yeah, whatever.
I
worth a
think
shot.
he's a better player. He's a better player than Crowder in my mind. And I think he showed it a couple times last season what he can be. I mean, the Bills' offense, I think, is gonna be awesome this year. I mean, it was awesome the last 2 years. I think it's gonna go to the next level this year, with Davis moving on to the next level. Dubs is we talked about Lazard earlier, that I don't think he's ever gonna be the guy. Obviously there's no guarantee that Dubs is gonna be the guy, but everything that they've been saying is that he's been involved. He's been running with the ones. I think it was worth a shot. I think it was Matt and I going back and forth on him. I think I got him for like $5. Wandale, I mentioned earlier, he might be the only man left standing in the Giants wide receiver corps, but I think he's gonna be fine. He does obviously don't have the upside that Tony does, but he'll at least be on the field. And then Kyle Phillips, for everything that they're saying, another rookie that's actually been doing better than Treylon. He's playing on a slot, but they don't see him coming off the field. So, I think it's worth the $1 shot to get him.
Looking at this wide receiver stack here, find a guy that you really like, and then also find a guy that you think should just be dropped. And let's not talk about Justin Jefferson, because he's obviously like a top tier wide receiver.
Yeah. Well, so first, let me just say, Mike, the guy that doesn't care about depth, going into lots and lots of discussion about his depth wide receiver pieces here, which I love his wide receiver depth, actually. You know, to answer your question, Sean, to answer your challenge, I think Courtland Sutton is just, I think he has the opportunity to have a really special season. I just think that he's really talented, and now he's got a quarterback who is also really very good, throws an excellent deep ball. I mean, he may just have a massive season, and it may be a league record. I think nobody's really talking about Isaiah McKenzie the way I think they should be. I mean, Mike mentioned the Cole Beasley role. Like, he had like 100 catches a couple of years ago or something like that. It was a lot. I mean, there's no reason why McKenzie can't step into that and be a very viable number 3 receiver. I mean, he might even be the number 3 after Jefferson and Sutton, when all is said and done. It's just I think it's such a good, like, top to bottom, it's such a good group. I mean, you asked me to drop somebody, I guess I would have to say Kyle Phillips, because he's just the worst one. But I mean, it's just from top to bottom, it's a really good group. You really can't say anything bad about it. So
Right, and I think that's why we have them ranked 1 and 2. I mean, Jefferson is going to be battling for, I think, that wide receiver 1 position all year. Sutton, I've got a few more questions. I'm not as confident with Sutton as you two are. I just don't like that Denver offense until they prove it. Ayuk, again, great pick. And the last guy I want to hit on here is Romeo Doubs. I really like him. Someone's got to get that ball in Green Bay. It's going to be someone, and we don't know who. And Mike, I agree with you on Lazard. Lazard's had chances in the past to be that guy, and he just never became it. So next man up. And then going to the tight ends here, the only thing that I want to comment on is that number is incorrect. I had Andrews ranked number 1, and I just double checked it here. Andrews was my number 1 tight end, so I think you really hit just about everywhere except for running back. Final thoughts on your own team, Mike?
Obviously quarterbacks could be better, but I'm really happy with the team. Obviously, there's a few guys that I would have loved to have gotten. We'll talk about when we get to Vince's team, but I obviously prioritize wide receiver, and I'm happy with my group. So, and I told myself I wasn't leaving the draft without Kyle Pitts or Mark Andrews. So mission accomplished there.
I certainly don't mind neglecting running back if you're going to get some good quarterbacks. And I think that was just where Mike fell short here. The receiver group is second to none, but the quarterbacks fell a little bit short. I wouldn't mind, seeing a little bit more from the quarterbacks, and then I think I would feel much better about this team. But without having, solid, uh, I guess above average quarterbacks, and with the running back group we're talking about here, it puts a lot of strain on the receivers, and it's a good group, so it could certainly happen, but that's really the only thing that's keeping me from having this team be rated higher than what I had it.
You had this team ranked number 12, Matthew. Let's just talk about this for a second.
Sure.
If you're gonna go at Sean, we need to have a discussion here.
I'm happy to. So I had your quarterbacks ranked hold on. You asked me a question. I'm gonna answer. So I had your quarterbacks ranked 13th. We talked about how I think you don't have any quarterback upside. I think Carr is probably the worst quarterback in that division, and I have questions about how good their offense is going to be because of their line. The running backs, again, I think, as you said, you only start one, but I don't really know that you're going to get. It's going to be hard for you to predict 10 points out of any of these guys any given week. And that's we talked about the tight end running back discussion. This is no different than starting a backup tight end or a lower end tight end. Like, you try to get 10 points out of a tight end, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get like reliably 10 points out of your running back each week, which is going to be that's going to be hard. That's going to be tough. The receivers are great. I mean, I gave them my number one grade. I think they're spectacular. I think there's depth. There's top end talent. There's no problem there. And tight end I think is fine. Again, Andrews is going to be one of the best in the league. And he's going to go. So you have 4 starting spots that are going to be good. You have your 3 receivers. You have your tight end. And then you have maybe 1 flex. I guess you could throw in your 4th receiver, whoever you're going to throw in there. So maybe 4 or 5 spots. But I think 3 of those spots, and in my opinion, the three biggest ones, quarterback, 2 quarterbacks, and a running back, is going to be every week a question mark. So that's why I had them towards the lower end of the league.
All right. Well, I guess I'm incrementally better than the FLAKES.
But yeah, well, I had them. What did I have the FLAKES 78?
Well, I meant rankings wise.
Season, all the stuff's gonna change. Going into the number 4 team, been wanting to talk about this team quite a bit actually. Make the show great again. And then looking at their 2 quarterbacks, I've got them ranked as the number 1 quarterback tandem in the league. You guys have them 3. Mike, tell me why they're not the best.
I mean, obviously, just name recognition, they're obviously incredible, but they both just lost the number 1 option, and I think it's going to hurt them both significantly. We were literally just talking that we still don't know who Rodgers' number 1 is going to be. I think they're going to be a significantly more run heavy than they've been the last couple of years. I mean, they've always been somewhat balanced. Rodgers always gotten it done with his efficiency, but we don't know who that efficiency is going to go to. And it could, like we mentioned, his number 1 receiver could be Aaron Jones. So who knows? And then Mahomes lost Tyreek. I mean, he's still going to put up good weeks, but the way you get from a good week to a great week is when you have one of those, big blow up plays, especially in our league with the bonus. Like, he doesn't have, I mean, MVS, I suppose, in theory, could be that guy. But again, it's not one of those guys that has never shown that he could be that guy. And he was playing with a great quarterback before. So I don't really expect that. I think he's lost, that 5th gear, if you will, like where it's, he's going to be good. It's just going to be if he's going to be elite, and I just don't see it this year.
You think it's time for Mahomes' wheels to start falling off a little bit?
I don't think they're going to be falling. No, I think he is. He's a nice sedan. He's not a sports car anymore.
Gotcha. Matt, what are your thoughts? You have them ranked the same.
Yeah, wait, so who is the nice sedan?
Mahomes.
Yeah.
He's like
a Mercedes
sedan.
when he was a Ferrari.
Vehicle, but it lacks the horsepower.
All right. I think Mahomes is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, I think it's probably him and Allen. And you can order them however you want. I think they're both, transcendent at the position at this point. So I think he's very much more than just a sedan. I think Rodgers, maybe you could make the argument, is, kind of maybe entering the twilight of his career and maybe is going to be slowing down a little bit. But he still seems to have gas in the tank and plenty of motivation to be excellent. I think one of the big things that we need to acknowledge here that Fume did with this quarterback group is he got both of them at pretty good value. I mean, considering what the numbers they've put up over the past few years and with the concerns of their top receivers leaving town, he was able to get these guys, I think, for maybe a few more than $60 for the two of them, which is
Yeah. Fume got Mahomes for
outstanding.
49 and Rodgers for 32.
Okay, so a little more
we're
than
talking
70 then.
$81, I think, total.
81. Okay. So yeah, so maybe Mahomes went for a little more than I thought he did, but I still think that this is a very formidable tandem, really good quarterbacks. I mean, every week you got the floor and the ceiling. It's gonna make them tough to play against. Having to go up against two good quarterbacks that are gonna bring it every week is gonna be tough. So.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to playing this team. I think he's got two former MVPs here in the quarterback position. I think that's going to be very difficult to overcome 60 points right off the bat between the two QBs. Going to the running backs, I think this is actually a really interesting backfield to watch. Fournette, Pierce, and Herbert. Matt, let's get your thoughts first, and then we'll go to Mike and me last.
I like Fournette. I don't think he's going to put up the points he did last year. I think that was an outlier season for him last year. So as an RB1, I think he probably is towards the back end. I like Dameon Pierce a lot. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for him to be, scoring a lot of fantasy points, and there's certainly upside potential there. Khalil Herbert is, I think, a talented player, but again, in an offense that doesn't really seem to be very formidable, and also Montgomery's in the backfield there, so he's in a committee at best. So I like the top two pieces. I think this group is okay, just okay.
Mike?
I agree with just about everything Matt said. I think it's another team that's probably gonna be starting one running back a week. Maybe. Well, I guess he might want to start Pierce, but Fournette, Brady's obviously was missing time to go get plastic surgery on his face, but when he did come back and play in the preseason, Fournette didn't come off the field when Brady was on the field. So I think he's obviously cemented into that role. There's really not anybody. I guess we were talking about White earlier, but I really don't think he's going to be taking Leonard off the field. And then Pierce, he has the potential to be a 3-down back in a really bad offense. So I guess kind of figure out how valuable those touches are going to be. And Rex Burkhead is still in town, as I mentioned earlier. He could be coming in on passing down and stealing touchdowns. So I guess it's worst case scenario is how much value can you get from a guy that's only like playing between the 20s. And that's kind of what my concern for Pierce. So, you know, I obviously the potential is there. We have no idea, you know, what his role is going to be. You know, they made a concerted effort to get him off the field and sit him during the preseason. So obviously they think he's the guy. I don't think there's any question about that. It's just, you know, my main concern is really with this offense. And then with Herbert, I think he's more talented than Montgomery. You know, in the games that he started last year, he looked great. I think Montgomery is dust. I just am so down on him. I just don't think he's very good at this point in his career. And obviously, you know, that offense is what it is. I don't think they're going to be doing much. So I could certainly see a situation where either there's an injury to Montgomery or they just realize that he is dust and they give Herbert a shot because he's got some juice in his legs.
Yeah, the only guy in this running back trio that I think is worth really talking about is Dameon Pierce. I don't mind the Dameon Pierce pick. What I didn't like about it was that he paid $15 for him. That's a lot of money for a guy who was, you know, just 4 weeks ago not even on anyone's radar. And now he's probably going to be the starting running back. I think he was actually named the starting running back, but there's still a lot of questions on that offense. And for $15, I just thought it was a bit much. I really thought he should have gone for 5 or less.
I mean,
that's my opinion.
Did you know who James Robinson was going into last season?
That's a tough question to answer. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I did or didn't. Yeah,
I probably no. So I it's I don't know. The opportunity's there. You know, he doesn't have to be in a great offense to have success. Like if he's getting volume, you know, if Mills is serviceable, you know, they may score at some point. So I mean, $15 for a starting running back is not terrible value. And just for the record, I won him at the auction, then sold him to Fume, because I actually do think Pierce is gonna be pretty good.
We'll wait and see. Wide receivers here, Matt. You really like this crew of T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, DJ Shark, Sky Moore, Sammy Watkins, Garrett Wilson, Alec Pierce, Mecole Hardman, Jalen Tolbert. I've got to assume that you like this this wide receiver core a lot for the same reasons that you like the nation's wide receiver core. Is that there's a lot of names in here that could pop.
Yeah, I absolutely like Sky Moore. I think, you know, could end up being one of those players where you're like, man, why didn't I draft this guy? You know, because you know, he's got that prototype that, you know, probably could be very useful in this Kansas City offense. I mean, he's no Tyreek Hill. Let's not lie to ourselves, but you know, that doesn't mean that he can't be a very, very useful fantasy player and have a great season. I love T. Higgins this year. I think he's going to be spectacular. In fact, you know, for the cost, I think I prefer him to Jamar Chase. I know Chase has, you know, kind of more the explosive, you know, game breaking type skill set, but I think Higgins, for his target share and for his usage and, you know, for the offense that he's in and the coverage that he's going to draw relative to Chase, I think he's just spectacular. So I'm very high on that. I think Waddle is no joke. I quietly think Miami's offense is actually going to be pretty good. I think they're going to be better this year. I think they're underrated. I like the direction they're heading. So, you know, and then I think Garrett Wilson is also another name we have to look at. I mean, he was the number one receiver coming out of the draft last year. He's on an escalating Jets offense that, you know, their offensive line got better. You know, they have more to move the ball and to, you know, put points on the board. So I wouldn't be surprised if Garrett Wilson is another breakout guy. And yeah, I mean, Sean, you hit the nail on the head. Like there's guys on this roster who can pop, namely Moore and Wilson, and that's what really draws me to them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go next on this one because I just want to mention one player on this roster that I really really like, and it's Jalen Tolbert. With the injury to Michael Gallup, that elevates Tolbert to wide receiver 2 in the Dallas offense, and I think that's just going to give him plenty of opportunities with Dak Prescott to make some moves there. So I like his wide receivers for the depth actually. Mike, you feel the worst about this wide receiver group of all of us.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as high on some of these guys.
You're not a big
as
depth
you are.
guy.
Well, that is true, but it's more of, I'm looking more for like, because as I said, I expect that Fume is probably only starting one running back, maybe two. So I'm trying to find that third and fourth guy. And I think Moore could probably be that guy. I don't think he's going to be that guy at the beginning of the season. Tolbert, as you mentioned, is going to be the number 2 until Gallup comes back. But I think his upside when Gallup comes back is going to be directly tied to the next guy we're going to talk about. So I feel like they're going to kind of be limiting each other's ceilings, he and Dalton Schultz. So I don't know. I love Higgins and Waddle. I worry about what comes after that, because I don't expect anything out of Chark or Watkins, Hardman, Peoples-Jones. Like, these guys they're just guys.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to find that third guy, and I'm just not seeing it.
All solid points there. And then lastly on Dalton Schultz, as we move to the tight ends, he's a guy. That's my opinion on it. He's okay. Matt?
Yeah, he made the most of opportunity last year. I think he has some talent. He's not transcendent. He's not Kyle Pitts, but he's a guy who when um, the ball is thrown his way, he can certainly get in the end zone and certainly put up some fantasy points. So I do view him as a middle of the road type player. I think he's a serviceable guy. I thought a lot of these mid range. This goes back to the conversation we're having like throughout this entire podcast. I just saw a lot of these mid range tight ends going for just way too much money. Like 10, 11, 12, 13, $15. I was like, why are we doing this? Like
Schultz went for
I, I'm happy with my Hayden Hurst for $1 and spend my money elsewhere rather than, you know, I mean Dalton Schultz is fine. I just don't think he elevates your team really very much.
Final thoughts on Make the Show Great Again. Matt, let's start with you.
This is one of the teams I think has a chance to win the whole thing. I mean, I value quarterbacks very highly. I think that they are super important. Um, I I think I probably value them more than most people do when I'm giving my grade. So having these guys be one of the best groups in the league, I think is hugely important. I think the running backs get you by. I don't think they're special, but they get you by. And I think the upside of this receiver group is just so massive. I think that the fact that he was able to stack a number of them on one roster. I think this is a championship potential team if these receivers can show up for him, if they can put up some big numbers. I think Fume is right in the mix.
Mike, are you confident with a championship-looking team here?
I'm not quite the championship, just because I do have questions about wide receivers, but I think it's a playoff team for sure.
I think they're going to be in the playoffs and in the hunt in about 15 weeks or so. Moving along to number 3, we're finally in the top 3 here. The rise of Ed Kilgore. A- quarterback.
We should note really quick. We should note these next 3 teams all finished with the same overall grade score. So the tiebreaker,
Really?
the tiebreaker really comes down to who got the highest single record. So you could really put any of these 3 teams in whatever order. The average was 88.7. So Sorry to cut you off, Sean, but I just
No,
wanted to
no,
make sure that
that's
people.
real. That's really
The,
interesting. Thanks for jumping in. How do you get
Yeah,
just
that
like
is.
a
I didn't.
random
I didn't
average of
realize that.
88.7 for three different teams? It's crazy. Um,
yeah, 88.6 repeating.
yeah, looking at the quarterbacks here, fourth and fifth, a top five quarterback team: Murray, Winston, and Garoppolo. You know what? I'm gonna jump in on this one first because I think one of the surprises to me of draft day was Jameis Winston going for $24. Matt, do you think it's gonna be worth it? He's got Murray. Murray's a good player, but Winston's kind of the question mark there, right?
I like Winston a lot. I'm with you that I'm surprised that he went for as much as he did, but I think quarterbacks are just so valuable in the show, and so they go for a premium price as a result. Everybody wants starters, everybody wants difference makers at the quarterback position. So, I guess I shouldn't be as surprised as I am, but I like this quarterback group a lot. I think Kyler Murray is, top 5 for sure. And Jameis, I think, has some potential that maybe people don't really recognize. He loves to push the ball downfield. He's going to have some games where he puts up some big numbers if his coaching staff allows him to do so. I think he's got some arm talent, and I think that the receiving core is underrated. Um, so I think this is an exciting group of quarterbacks.
Mike.
So yeah, I ranked him number 5, and it's really just based on Kyler. I think Jameis is just okay. He's serviceable. Jimmy is not seeing the field unless Lance gets hurt. I mean, the 49ers just spent so much draft capital on Lance. Like, they need to give him a full season to see what they have. They can't afford to bench him. I mean, the only argument against it is that they just have such a talented, like, deep run playoffs roster beyond that, if they're wasting it because Lance is playing so terribly, but I don't foresee that happening. So I really only see him having 2 quarterbacks, and Kyler's really the reason why I gave him the number 5 overall ranking.
Yeah, I really like Jameis Winston a lot. I had him on the nation last year and he got hurt, but in the games that he did play, he was solid. He was solid. He had one game where he absolutely popped, and then the other two they were okay. You get that 15 points. That's kind of what you expect for arguably a bottom tier quarterback. But the nice thing about Winston, in my opinion, is that he has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback, and you only got him for $24. I think that's good. Even though 24 I think is a lot to have spent on Winston, I think you'll still get your value for him if he plays full season. Looking at the running backs here, this was a big concern for me when I was looking at the team, even though I only have him ranked 8th here. Kareem Hunt, Cordero Patterson, Isaiah Spiller, and James Robinson. James Robinson, a little bit to like there. Cordero Patterson, a little bit to like. Kareem Hunt, a little bit to like. But is there a lot to like, Matt?
No, I mean, I ranked them 13 for a reason. I mean, they're not one of the better groups in the league, but I do think that there is, some baseline value here. I mean, Cordero Patterson overachieved last year, and I don't think there's any reason why he's not going to get a shot again this year. Kareem Hunt, it has standalone value as a backup running back. Don't I don't know how the dynamic is working there right now with him, requesting a trade, and there's definitely some concerns with, how they're going to use him now. If he's going to be a disgruntled player, a distraction, is he going to be a healthy scratch? Is he going to be utilized the same way he was in years past? There's a lot of questions there. I think the
You're gonna
big
smack a
one that we
girl
have
in
to
the
look at,
elevator.
yeah, yeah. I think the big question here is Isaiah Spiller. I know there's been a lot of talk about, him potentially coming in and earning a little bit more of a workload, maybe even handling some goal line duties in Los Angeles. So that's the guy I guess I would highlight in this running back group. If you can get something out of him, especially towards the latter half of the season, if you're just needing to start one running and maybe he can kind of fill like an AJ Dillon role, then that's not too shabby.
Mike, you were talking about how you liked James Robinson earlier in the Jaguars offense, but you've got this backfield rated last in the league. Have you lost your luster over James Robinson?
Well, I think I was more making a point that nobody had ever heard of James Robinson going into last season, and then he, I think, was the RB1. But no, I don't really like anybody in this backfield here. I guess Robinson's maybe the one that stands out most to me because, it sounds like he and ETN are kind of battling out at 50-50 right now for touches. Spiller, I don't think they just love Eckler so much. Like, I really think it's going to take an injury for him to have any value. Patterson, had his 8 games or whatever last year where he was great, but then he kind of came back down to earth, and that's really where I think he exists. And then, Kareem Hunt is dealing with the same issues I talked about with Chubb earlier, and he's not the starter. So even more concerning. So this is, in my mind, the worst running back group in the league.
Flipping over to the wide receivers, much different story here between McLaurin, Lamb, Hollywood Brown, and a bunch of guys that I think have potential at least. We have them ranked 2, 3, and 6. Height, you like this one the best of all of us. You think it's the second best wide receiver core in the league. Tell us why.
Yeah, so CeeDee Lamb, I think may lead the league in targets this year. And I think he's just due for just an absolute breakout year. I think Lacombe got him for $39. Like, I think he's going to get a lot of bang for his buck there. I think Lamb's going to be awesome. McLaurin is actually who I'd rank third. I like Marquise better than McLaurin this year. With the Hopkins absence and, those targets going out of town with Kirk. Marquise had a really good season last year with Lamar and Tyler Huntley. So I think, he's going to have an even better throwing quarterback with Kyler. So he's going to have that stack, which I really like for at least the first 6 games of the season. And it's possible they could have developed a rapport so good that, when Hopkins comes back, he's just irrelevant or just he's not the alpha anymore. And then McLaurin will be fine. He's produced in the past with below average quarterbacks. That's what he's got again this year, just a different one. My main concern with this team is kind of, yes, I ranked because those are the 3 starters. Like, I think that's a great group of wide receivers. I'm just worried about who the next guy is because looking at his running backs, I think he's also another one of those start one guy group. I'm looking for the 4th or 5th guy here, and I'm not really seeing it. But those 3 are just such a good combo that I really like them. But, for him to go deep and to have a playoff run, Watson is going to have to show out, or, something's going to have to happen to Allen Robinson for Van Jefferson to be relevant. So that's where my main concern lies.
Matt, you've got him ranked 6th.
Yeah, solid group. I mean, Mike said it. The top 3 is really good. I think Lamb. I do worry a little bit about the Dallas offense this year. I think that they were great last year, but I don't know if I see them doing the same as what they did last year. Mike's right that he's going to get just a boatload of targets, but I'm just a little bit worried about how much they get in the end zone, and that does matter, even in a PPR league. So we'll see what CD does. I mean, he's a fine wide receiver 1. I like him plenty. I'm not as high on Marquise Brown. I think there's a lot of mouths to feed in Arizona. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with all of those guys, all those players. That where is Kyler gonna throw the ball? It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. I think that Corey Davis is a decent, 4th option there if you're looking for a 4th guy, like Mike was saying. But certainly not anything special. So I think they
Honestly, Matt, to jump in here on that Corey Davis comment, I don't want any part of the Jets offense. I would think Christian Watson might actually be a decent plug.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, we haven't seen anything from the Packers yet that Christian Watson's really stepping into that type of role yet, and I realize it's only preseason right now. We haven't seen any regular season play, but Mike mentioned earlier, Rodgers is a big trust guy. He wants to make sure that he is throwing to players that he knows are going to be able to, know the routes and be smart football players and bring down the football. So, uh, he, I think he's a big question mark at this moment.
And then moving to tight ends, you and Mike both have Kyle Pitts ranked number 2. I had him as the number 3 tight end. And I'll go first on that because I'm the oddball out here. I had him ranked as the number 3 just because I don't like that Atlanta offense. I think not only adding Drake London to the mix is going to throw things kind of out of whack for Kyle Pitts, but also despite his great receiving numbers last year, I think he only had like 2 touchdowns. And that was a big concern for me to make him like a number 1 tight end. I would just rather have Andrews or Kelsey. But what are your thoughts on Kyle Pitts, Mike?
I just think he's a generational talent, and I think you just have an absolute cheat code when you have him playing tight end because he's just a wide receiver who's bigger than everyone. And yeah, obviously the concerns with Mariota are warranted, but you are looking in fantasy football for predictable production, and it's really just going to be him and London. And I don't think having London actually hurts him. I think, opposing defense are going to have to pay attention to London, so they're not just going to be able to shift all their coverage to take away Pitts. So I don't know. If anything, I think the addition of London's going to help him, and I think he's going to have, if anything, he's going to improve. I think he only scored 1 touchdown last year, actually, but I think he's going to improve on that, and I think his yardage numbers are going to be even better than they were last year.
Matt, thoughts on Kyle Pitts or final thoughts on the rise of Ed Kilgore?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I actually think that the addition of Drake London is a positive for Kyle Pitts because he's not going to be blanketed all the time. So Mariota supported Delaney Walker in the past. He had some good seasons in Tennessee throwing him the ball. So I think there's certainly plenty of belief that Pitts with his talent can succeed. And Pitts had a historical season last year as a rookie tight end. I mean, I was looking at something online that was saying that only like Mike Ditka had a better rookie season than Kyle Pitts statistically. So I think the sky is the limit for this guy. I think he's worth every penny. I mean, he's the only guy I would have been willing to spend. If I would have probably gone heavily on him if I hadn't gone so high on McCaffrey and Saquon, because I think he's just that good. But I mean, Lacomb's going to be very, very pleased to have him on his roster. I'm going to hate playing against him.
Mike, final thoughts on the rise of Ed Kilgore. Overall thoughts. You have him ranked, what do you have here? 88.
Really good team. Like I said, if you can find that 4th or 5th piece, he's going to be a dangerous team with really no weak spots.
Yeah, I like this team a lot. That's why they've got a 91 rating from me. I believe that might be the highest from me in the show as well. So, moving on to the number 2 team, collectively graded team. My team is fine. I think my team is fine this year. Mike, is there any? Let's dive into the quarterbacks here. Obviously, you got Allen, who's no one in here is going to say, I'd rather have someone else. And then behind him, you've got Tua and Goff. So let's talk about Tua and Goff, Mike. What are your thoughts about Tua being a player, and then if he's not, can Goff step in?
I mean, I think Tua's just okay, but I think the addition of Hill, and just like another year in the offense, another year with Waddle, another experience for Waddle, is really going to make a huge difference. And I just think that offense is going to be greatly improved with was it Mike McDaniel? Is that the coach? No, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
Weird guy. I don't.
It's
Whatever.
gonna be goofy.
Whatever their new coach. It's not Mike McDaniel, but he's bringing over the San Francisco offense. I think it's going to be a big change and much better for Miami. And I'm expecting, he's not going to blow the roof off, but he's going to be much better than he's been the last couple of years. And I just think the combo with Josh Allen is just a really good combo. I pretty much anybody with Josh Allen would be a good combo, but I think that Tua is going to, take that next step this year. And having Jared Goff for fill-ins during bye weeks is fine. I mean, he was okay last year. He's probably going to outscore any guy that you're going to have on your bench, for that super flex spot. So, as you can see by my grade, this is my number one team.
Matt, you've got this QB trio ranked lowest of us at number 4. Tell us what kind of set you off about it.
It's hard for me to say that I'm set off by it. I think it's still really, really good. There's just a couple of other teams that I thought were a little better, which is why I have these guys at 4. But I mean, I think Allen is the best fantasy quarterback in the league. I think there's a very good chance he's the best quarterback in football. I think that he has the ability to play 2 quarterbacks every week, which is huge. It's a huge advantage in a super flex format. I think you can kind of just play matchups with Tua and with Goff. Just depending on whatever game script he wants to follow with those other 2 guys and Allen just a plug and play. So it's hard to find a bad thing to say about this quarterback situation.
Hard to find something bad to say about the quarterbacks, but let's dive into the running backs here. Matt, if you were Vince, who are you plugging into that RB1 position on this team?
I'm super excited about Breece Hall. I know there's a lot of chatter out there about, maybe the pass down work getting depleted with, Michael Carter there, but I think he's just really, really freakish. And I think that he's one of those guys who has just a crazy ceiling. And I think those are the guys you have to target in fantasy football if you want to be successful. Anybody can go and spend, $60 on a player and know you're going to get good value, but it's, finding those diamonds in the rough that really put you over the top. I think that's kind of where I unfortunately fell short this year was, those long shot guys that you want to invest in. I don't think I found that. And I think Vince may have found that in Breece Hall this year, so I'm super excited about him. He's the guy I target. I love Vince's team. Like, I think he and I probably have a lot of the same thoughts on players and philosophy about fantasy. So, I think he just has, really solid options here at running back. Nothing really like blows the lid off. Like, it's just a lot of guys you could set up. If I like Edmonds, I think Edmonds might actually have a really good season. So I think it's Hall and Edmonds, and then everybody else just kind of a plug and play. But this is a solid group.
Mike, I'm going to give you the same question. Week 1, let's just put you in the shoes of Vince here. Who are you starting in that running back slot?
I think it's Chase Edmonds. I talked about the guy that, while I'm happy to have Melvin Gordon, the guy that it prevented me from getting was Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is one of the guys that I didn't want to walk out of the draft without, because I think he's going to be great. He really doesn't have a lot of competition in Miami other than Mostert, and I said he's dust. So I think Chase Edmonds is going to be great in this offense. And then my second option would be Antonio Gibson. Obviously, Matt's misfortune obviously works in Vince's favor here. They were talking about Antonio Gibson returning punts and kicks at one point in time. And now he's pretty much solidified himself as the running back 1 in Washington for the foreseeable future. But, we're about to talk about Vince's wide receivers. I don't think that Vince needs to start any more than one of these guys. Maybe he wants to start Gibson and Edmonds while Gibson's got that role locked down. But I don't know. I think in this league, he's got plenty of options to choose from.
Well, let's move over to the wide receivers on that. So you're starting Allen and Tua, and then you're plugging in one of those guys at running back. That leaves you with three other or like 2 wide receivers and 2 flex positions. So that's 4 other players to fill here. Between Diggs, Robinson, Bateman, Toney, Lockett, and Burks. Maybe you throw one of the other running backs in that other flex position. I don't know. But assuming here you want to plug them all with 4 wide receivers, do you feel confident that you can do that, Mike?
Without a doubt. I mean, obviously Diggs is a obvious starter. I think Robinson's going to be great, kind of taking over the Robert Woods role in LA. I have high expectations for Bateman this year. I think Vince got him for like $8. I think that's a great value. I think he's going to, he may not have the same production as Marquise had last year, but I think he's going to have a very good year. He's a first-round draft pick. I think he's got the pedigree. I think he's going to show what he can do this year. Toney, in spurts last year, he showed what he could do when he was healthy. He's just an electric player when he gets the ball in his hands. And, it may only be a couple games this year, but I think he's going to have a couple really good games. What I was talking about earlier with maybe starting Gibson at the beginning of the season while he's got that locked down, I think by the time that if Robinson does come back, I think Burks will be up to speed and, he'll be a full-fledged alpha in that offense. I'm not expecting much of the Titans offense, but I do think that, especially for what I think Vince got him for like $2. Right. I think Burks is going to be a very good value and a very good pick there. And so to me, I think Vince has absolutely got four wide receivers to start week in and week out.
Matt, you really don't like this wide receiver group. You've got them ranked 13, near dead last. Tell me why.
Yeah, well, it's all relative, I mean, like everybody's got good receivers because there's so many good ones. So it's not that I don't like his receivers. I really like Diggs a lot. I think Diggs is probably one of the better receivers in fantasy this year. I don't think he gets drafted like it a lot of the time, but I think he's really pretty high up there. I guess it's just kind of an issue with where he took his shots. Some of these guys I'm not as high on. I do have concerns about Robinson. I know he was in Chicago last year, and obviously that was not a good situation. And he's played well with quarterbacks who are not good in the past. So that was a concern to me when he had such a down year. And I wonder if he's maybe just not good anymore. Bateman in a run-first offense I think the upside is capped a little bit, but the value is there. $8 on Bateman is fine. Toney, I think is okay. Lockett is not a guy I would have drafted. Burks, same thing. There are a lot of questions about him this year. I mean, he's one of the rookie receivers I'm not as high on. So, yeah, I like the way he constructed his receivers. I like the way he kind of set it up with one stud and then a bunch of guys that hopefully will hit. It's just not the guys I would have picked, I guess.
Yeah, I feel very similar to the way you do on this, except to a lesser extent. I think the only issue that I have with this wide receiver is Allen Robinson. And he got him for $18, which is a lot, in my opinion. for a guy who, what has Robinson shown you over the last 3 years to make you think that he's worth $18? Is there
Well,
anything?
it was just last year that was bad. I mean, he'd been good before that, but he is getting older. I wonder if it's more than just the quarterback play that's hampering him at this point. It may be that he is deteriorating a little bit as a player, and I think that possibility does exist. I think that is something we have to factor in as a risk here. So
Yeah, so that's my only question mark. I like everyone else. Tony's going to be great if he stays healthy. Bateman, someone's got to get the ball in Baltimore other than the tight ends here. And then Lockett, I think he'll continue his production to a lesser extent, obviously, with different quarterbacks, and then Burks. Yeah, it's a rookie flyer. It's worth it. For $2. Tight ends here. Kind of middle of the road. We're looking at Goddard. Mike, you've got him ranked the highest at number 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I told you I wasn't walking out without Pitts or Andrews, but when I saw that Dallas Goedert went for $6, I wanted to vomit because I just think he's going to be awesome this year. I think he's going to be the number 2 option behind A.J. Brown in a very high-scoring offense. He's going to score a bunch of touchdowns. I don't know. I think he's going to be great. And I just think Vince got great value. I think this team that he's built is going to be a monster.
Matt, you're up there too on Goddard.
yeah, I love Goddard. He's good, really good. Vince has loved him for a long time, and rightfully so. I mean, he's just really talented. He's in a great position. There's not a lot to dislike here. I think that, the only reason he's at 5 here is because there's just some other freak tight ends that are a little bit better. But I mean, Goddard's right up there.
Yeah, I think Goddard was the bottom of the top 5 tier for me. I think I've got him ranked 8 though. I might have just thrown a few other guys in there like Ertz and Goddard. I see them kind of being similar. I like Goddard a little bit more, but Ertz still has some potential in that Arizona offense. But the price that he got him for, you just can't beat that. Overall, Vince, solid team all around. I think I gave him the lowest grade, but I was also the harshest grader amongst us. Matt, you had him ranked 88, and Mike 93. Mike, any final thoughts on this team and on how they deserve a 93 grade?
I just think it's a very well-rounded team. I think he's got really good guys in the places you want, and we're going to talk about this team in a couple minutes.
Matt, who stands out to you on this team as a final thought?
Well, so a couple things. I mean, if I'm highlighting a player, I think it's Breece Hall. I just think his talent is really, really very good, and I think that the Jets' offensive line is much improved. I think we're going to see the Jets be a lot better this year than they were last year offensively, and that's going to, I think, allow for Breece Hall to score a lot of points this year. I think he's sneaky to be a top 10 running back this year. And I think that, Vince, may end up going very deep in the playoffs because of him, in part because of him. The other thing I want to say is I love the new logo for Vince's team. I think that's super cool. Apparently Fume was one that designed that, so hats off to Darren for putting that together. But it's kind of fun to get that new logo up there.
Well, we're almost there, gentlemen. It's been a long episode, but we are here at the number 1 ranked team post-draft, New World Order. Is it any surprise that Brandon ends up here, Matt?
Well, after the draft day trade that he made, I think it's hard to envision him being anywhere else. I know you guys may disagree a little bit with that, but this is the best quarterback group that we have here because there's two quarterbacks who offer enormous rushing upside, which is something that is extremely predictive when it comes to quarterback play and quarterback output on a fantasy level. And Trey Lance and Lamar Jackson are both elite in that sense. So these are guys that can you can just start with 50 points, and it won't even be you won't even bat your eyes when these guys are playing each week. So 50 points from your quarterbacks, and then you just need 70 from the rest of your group, which is very manageable. So it's a great way to start your roster.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I was really targeting Trey Lance quite a bit. What was surprising to me in the draft, let me just check how much he actually went for. Trey Lance went for $38. I was really expecting Lance to kind of stay in the 20s there. And so when the bidding went out of control at the 30s, I couldn't hold on any longer. But definitely a guy I was targeting. Just really like this quarterback tandem between Jackson and Lance for the same reasons you do. Mike, any other thoughts on them?
No, I ranked him number one. They're having two dual threat quarterbacks is obviously a cheat code. So he's obviously got off to a great start.
And then another cheat code. I mean, obviously the trade here for Taylor, and then he's also got a solid group of running backs behind him that could be in the flex conversation here. Matt, where do you want to start with the running backs?
Yeah, it's really just unfair, kind of the way it went down. I mean, the way he built his roster, just he and I think have a similar philosophy with quarterbacks. Like you just have to have really good ones, and he's got the best, and they can run, and then I think he kind of was trying to maybe go a little cheaper on running back to kind of make up for that, the capital that he had spent on quarterback. And then he has the opportunity to pick up Taylor for pennies. And so now he's not only got one of the best, if not the best quarterback group, he's got one of the best running back groups too, because, he's got one of the best running backs in Taylor, and then ETN, who I feel very strongly about, especially from a PPR perspective. I just think he could be very, very good this year. And Elijah Mitchell as your third running back. I mean, he can start three running backs. He can start two running backs. He can start one running back. He's just so versatile with the way he can construct his roster week in and week out. It's going to be so hard to beat. I mean, with his approach and his daily fantasy pedigree and all the work that he's done and the research that he puts in and he's an intelligent guy. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to be better than you most of the time. And when his roster's better than you and he's smarter and does more research, how are you going to beat him? You're not, right? So
Well, I mean, we know he's just never going to win the show championship, so we've got that going for us. We've got that going. The wide receivers. Mike, did I get your thoughts on the running backs, by the way?
I don't really have much to say. I mean, obviously Jonathan Taylor is going to be a stud. I'm not expecting nearly as much out of ETN or Mitchell as Matt is. I think Lance really limits Mitchell's ceiling, and then ETN just I don't know. I think that Robinson really caps his ceiling as well. So while I think that the Taylor trade was outrageous, I don't think Brandon did as much with this team as he possibly could have. I mean, obviously he got the best quarterbacks possible in 2 QB league, which is what you want. But I mean, we're about to move on to the part that I really think is lacking.
I think it's very easy to look at preseason and say it's lacking, but I do think there's a lot of potential here with Smith-Schuster, Judy, and Elijah Moore. Again, I don't like playing Jets players, but if there's a Jets player I have to roster, I'd probably say Moore. Matt, how are you feeling about these wide receivers?
Well, I mean, following up the quarterback and running back, I think they're really good. I think you can still start 3. I mean, I think Smith-Schuster right now is the number one option in Kansas City at this moment. Maybe that changes as the season goes on, but he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league throwing to him, and he's gonna be targeted. Um, I'm we've already talked about this. I'm super high on Denver's offense. I think Judy is very, very, very underrated. I think he's a very good route runner. I don't think he's quite the playmaker that Sutton is necessarily with the ball in the air, but he's more polished as a route runner. And I think he brings a different type of receiver to that offense, which I think is super valuable. And I think it's going to probably manifest itself in lots of fantasy points. And Elijah Moore as your third receiver is it's just really good. I mean, I think this is, you know, to have three position groups in the top 7, I just it's just really, really hard to do, and he's managed to do it.
Mike, any further thoughts on the wide receivers?
Yeah, I guess I'm not nearly as high on this group as Matt is. Juju has shown in the past that he's not capable of being the alpha. I mean, he had a great year in Antonio's last year in Pittsburgh, and then the next year when he was supposed to be the one, he just kind of fell flat on his face. And I'm kind of expecting the same thing to happen here. I think Kelsey's automatically the alpha in that offense, and I would expect Sky Moore to start taking on a bigger role. And I think Juju will be fine. I don't love him as a number one receiver. Obviously Brandon felt the same way because DJ Moore was what he had in mind as his number one wide receiver, but that was involved in the Taylor trade. And I'm not expecting nearly as much out of Judy as Matt is. I don't think it's going to be a Lockett Metcalf situation in Denver this year. I think he's going to be a distant second to Sutton. I think he'll be fine, but same thing with Moore. Like, I think he had a great season last year, but there's more mouths to feed in that offense now. Flacco moves the ball down the field by throwing pass interference passes. And so you don't get credit for those in the stats. Wilson really didn't do anything that, really impressed anybody last year. Moore's fine, but again, I see him more as like a fourth receiver in this offense. And, Hamler and Chenault are really nobodies. So Brandon's, usually the strength of Brandon's team is a wide receiver, and that's, in my mind, very much not the case. I think this is definitely a bottom third wide receiving.
There might be some difference of opinion on the wide receivers, but where I think we all agree is the tight end. That's the one area on this team that could really use some polishing. Noah Fant and Evan Ingram. Is there a chance that Ingram can get back to his, early career numbers, Matt?
Don't care. Tight end, boring.
All right,
Doesn't matter.
Mike, better person to ask.
No,
Plug.
I'm not expecting anything out of either of these guys. Brandon clearly made a point of punting on tight end. Apparently he values them the same as Matt does. But, I mean, he told me going into the draft that he wasn't leaving without Kyle Pitts, and obviously that did not come to fruition. So, who knows?
Well, overall thoughts on this team, I've got to say it's a pretty solid team all around. Like I said, the only dull spot's tight end. But it's kind of a question mark if that even comes back to bite you in the season. That's up for debate. Matt, what are your thoughts on him?
It's championship or bust for him. I mean, he has all the pieces in place here. Would you have liked to have seen a DJ Moore on this roster? Yeah, for sure. But would you trade him for Jonathan Taylor? Yeah, every day. I mean, so I think he's poised to make a deep run again, and I think that I wouldn't go so far as to say it's his to lose, but I mean I think he's right up there.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. I obviously the way to to Matt's heart is not through his stomach, but through quarterbacks and running backs, and that's all Matt needs to see. I'm very much not of that mindset. It's a good team in my mind, but it's not like I think there's much better teams in this league, and I think that this team really has no depth, even though depth's not my thing. But should an injury hit any of his guys, I think he's going to be in real trouble, and that's somewhere where I think he should be concerned.
Final thoughts on the draft. Let's talk about who you think will be in the running for the SHOPHY. Let's get a winner and a loser from each of you. Mike, let's go first.
So my champion is our fearless leader, Vince Walsh. I have him beating Grizz in the championship.
Matt.
Yeah, well, you guys just heard me talk about Jars. He had a heartbreaking loss last year. He's my pick to get it done this year. I think he wins in a close championship matchup over Darren Fume.
Yeah, I've also got Fume in the championship. I think that's the only place where we all agree on this. I originally had him in the championship against Lacombe, but if you guys don't mind, I'm going to pivot that. I'm still going to have Fume winning the championship, but it's going to be against Jars. Of course, Jars is just never going to win the SHOPHY, so he can go to as many SHOPHYs as he wants. But I'm going to take Fume this year. I just really like his stack of Mahomes, Rodgers, and then his wide receivers of Waddle, Higgins, and Sky Moore could even come out. And Fournette's still a solid running back. He won the Steve Wilson Award last year. So I think there's a lot of upside on make the show great again. I think they're definitely championship caliber. That's the end of the draft episode. We got through it, boys. We got through it. It was a long episode, but we got
4 hours.
Yeah, we got through it.
Amazing.
Outrageous.
But we're not done yet. There is still one thing that we want to look forward to for the Week 1 preview, which will be coming out next week. And it's...
Who's that Pokemon?
Who's that Pokemon? AFC East running back, rostered by 82.6% of leagues. The year here, by the way, is 2017. I did not add that. 2017 AFC East running back. Rostered in 82.6% of leagues, averaged only 9 points a game, and he was ultimately benched in the championship.
Frank Gore.
Frank Gore, AFC East in 2017? Was he?
It's a pretty good guess. I mean, he played for 3 of the 4 AFC East teams, didn't he? He just didn't play for the Patriots, so that's not a bad guess.
I think the big hint here is the high roster percentage. I don't think Frank Gore was rostered that much. This is a tough one. I'll admit.
The first thing I was thinking was maybe Jay Ajayi, but that doesn't look like Jay Ajayi.
No, it's,
so
you're
he
quite
has
close to that. Quite close though.
Yeah.
Jay Ajayi is a very, very good guess, but
it doesn't look anything like him though.
Yeah. We'll have that reveal next week. I'm looking forward to it. The season starts in less than a week. Boys, 6 days. So what? Any plans for the game on Thursday, Mike?
I think Alyssa's family's gonna come over and watch the game, but not anything crazy.
Matt?
I don't think I have any plans. It'll definitely be on the TV. Probably will wager some dollars on it in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward for the season starting. I think it's gonna be a really good game. I think it's a really good start to the season. 2 really good teams. So
Shod parlays coming up next week. I'm so excited for it, boys. Have a good weekend.